The air does not move. It is a physical weight, a smothering blanket woven from dust and heat and the metallic tang of sun-baked rock. You feel it pressing on your skin, drawing the moisture from your body with a thief's greed. This is the land the locals call Eudaemon Arabia, fortunate Arabia, and the irony is so profound it has ceased to be amusing. For 6 months, it has been a landscape of delirious shimmer and relentless thirst. A cartographer's nightmare of shifting dunes and jagged, volcanic highlands where the maps you brought from Egypt are less than useless. Here, in the heart of the Sabaean kingdom, the only fortune seems to be the one you chase. It is a scent on the wind, a ghost of a rumour that has pulled your legion, the 22nd Diotariana, and its auxiliaries across the Red Sea and through this unforgiving wilderness. It is the smell of wealth itself, frankincense, myrrh, cassia, spices that in Rome are worth more than their weight in gold, commodities so precious they are burned as offerings to the gods themselves. Augustus wants this wealth, not traded through intermediaries. And you, alias Gallus, prefect of Egypt, you stand on a temporary rampart built of sandbags and scavenged timber, looking down at the prize. Marib. The city is not what the traders' tales in Alexandria had led you to believe. There are no streets paved with gold, no towers of polished ivory. It is a fortress of sun-dried brick and stone, ancient and formidable, nestled in a valley that channels the occasional breeze, a luxury your men have been denied for weeks. Its walls are thick, studded with square towers, from which the glint of defenders' helmets occasionally flashes. But its true strength, its lifeblood, is the Great Dam. You can see it to the south, a monumental structure of earth and stone that plugs the mouth of the Dana Valley. It is an engineering marvel that dwarfs anything your Roman architects have conceived, a testament to a civilization that has mastered this arid land. The dam traps the monsoon rains, creating a vast reservoir that feeds an intricate network of canals, turning the desert plain around the city into a verdant, shocking explosion of green. It is an oasis on a scale you could never have imagined. This is the source of their power, the foundation of their kingdom, and it is beginning to fail them. Your chief engineer, a pragmatic Syrian named Lucius, had pointed it out days ago. The water level in the reservoir is dangerously low. The canals closest to the city are still flowing, but the outlying fields are turning brown, the sorghum stalks wilting under the sun. The Sabaeans have held out for months, confident in their walls and their water. They did not count on a Roman siege during the driest season in living memory. They did not count on Roman discipline, on the methodical, relentless construction of siege lines that have choked off every supply route. The cost has been staggering. Of the 10,000 infantry you led out of Egypt, nearly half are gone. Disease, born from fouled water sources, claimed hundreds. Sunstroke felled dozens more. And the thirst has been a constant, insidious enemy, turning strong men into withered husks. The local guides, Nabateans, promised a share of the spoils, proved treacherous. They led you on a circuitous route through the most desolate parts of the desert, a journey that should have taken weeks but stretched into agonizing months. You see, now it was a deliberate strategy. A form of attrition warfare this land has perfected over millennia. Let the desert do the fighting. You had the guides crucified 2 weeks ago, a grim warning displayed for the city's defenders to see. It did little to raise your men's morale. They are exhausted, their Egyptian linen tunics threadbare, their hobnailed caligae falling apart. They are a world away from the familiar green of the Nile or the cool breezes of the Mediterranean. They are Romans, but this land is slowly unmaking them, stripping away their certainties. Yesterday, a deputation emerged from the city's main gate under a flag of truce. They were tall, proud, men with dark, intelligent eyes, their white robes a stark contrast to the grime and sweat of your own officers. Their leader, a man who called himself the Marib, a priest-king, spoke through an interpreter. He offered you safe passage back to the sea, along with a tribute of 100 talents of frankincense. A fortune, but not the fortune Augustus demanded. He spoke of the sacred inviolability of his city, of the protection of his god, Almacar, the lord of the moon. You refused. You sent them back with a simple message: unconditional surrender. The city and its trade belonged to Rome. The Mukarib's eyes had held a look not of fear, but of profound pity, as if you were the one already lost. Now, as the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, the moment of truth arrives. The main siege tower, a monstrous wooden beast, assembled with sweat and curses over the past month, groans as it is pushed toward the city's western wall. It is lower than you would like. The lack of quality timber in this treeless land has limited its height, but it is high enough. Inside its belly are 500 of your best men, a mix of legionaries and Gallic auxiliaries, their faces grimly set. The sounds of the city change. The low murmur of daily life is replaced by the sharp clang of alarm gongs and the shouting of commands in a language you do not understand. From your vantage point, you see swarms of white-robed defenders moving along the ramparts. The air fills with the scent of something other than dust-burning pitch, the fuel for their arrows. A horn blast, deep and resonant, echoes from your own lines. The advance begins. The siege tower lurches forward, its wooden wheels creaking in protest against the sandy soil. Your scorpions and ballistae, positioned on the flanks, unleash their first volley. Heavy bolts and stones whistle through the air, smashing into the mud-brick walls with dull thuds, sending up plumes of dust. The defenders answer with a shower of arrows, many of them are light, arcing through the twilight like angry fireflies. Most fall short or hiss harmlessly against the tower's water-soaked hides. You feel a strange calm settle over you. This is familiar territory. The chaos of the battlefield is a problem to be solved, an equation of force and will. It is the silent, patient hostility of the desert that truly unnerves you. The tower reaches the wall. The great ramp clatters down, slamming against the enemy battlements. For a heartbeat, there is silence. Then, with a roar that is more animal than human, your men pour forth. The Gauls, bare-chested and terrifying, lead the charge. Their long swords a whirlwind of steel. They are met by a wall of shields and spears. The fight on the rampart is a brutal, claustrophobic affair. You can hear the screams, the wet crunch of blades on bone. Even from this distance, for what feels like an eternity, the outcome hangs in the balance. The Sabaeans fight with a ferocity you did not expect. They are not a rabble, they are disciplined soldiers defending their homes. They know how to use the terrain of their own walls, funneling your attackers into killing zones. But Roman discipline is a thing forged in 1,000 battles. From the misty forests of Germania to the sun-scorched plains of Syria, your centurions are at the front, their voices bellowing orders, their Vitus canes directing the flow of the assault, plugging gaps, pushing men forward. Slowly, inexorably, the weight of Roman steel begins to tell. The defenders are pushed back from the ramp. Your men secure a foothold. More legionaries swarm up the tower, reinforcing the breach. A second horn blast signals the advance of the battering ram against the main gate. The rhythmic, percussive boom echoes across the valley, a drumbeat counting down the city's final moments. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the din. A deep, groaning rumble that seems to come from the earth itself. It is not the sound of battle. It is something older, more elemental. You turn your gaze southward, toward the great dam. A plume of dust and spray is rising from its center, catching the last rays of the setting sun. A fissure, a dark crack, has appeared in the massive earthen wall. The Sabaeans on the wall see it too. A collective wail of despair rises from the city, a sound of pure, soul-deep horror. Their god has failed them. Their lifeblood is bleeding away. The distraction is fatal. Your men on the rampart, sensing the shift in morale, surge forward with renewed fury. The defensive line breaks. At the same time, The main gate splinters, then bursts inward under the relentless assault of the ram. Your legionaries pour into the city streets, their short, thrusting gladii making quick work of the panicked defenders. The battle is over. The siege is won. Later that night, you walk through the captured city. The fighting has mostly ceased, replaced by the grim business of securing strategic points and rounding up prisoners. The air is thick with the smoke of fires and the smell of blood. But underneath it all, another scent is emerging, released from the city's great storehouses. It is the smell of raw, unprocessed frankincense. A scent so pure and powerful it is almost dizzying. It is the perfume of victory. Your centurions bring the Marib before you in the city's central temple. He is no longer a king, just an old man in a torn robe, his face a mask of grief. He looks not at you, but past you, toward the southern valley where his people's greatest creation is crumbling into the sand. He speaks in his own tongue, his voice heavy with sorrow. Your interpreter translates. "You have not conquered Marib," the old man says. "You have merely presided over its death. The desert will take it back now. It takes everything. In the end." You look at the statues of his gods, strange, stylized figures with impassive stone faces. You order your men to pull them down. You are Aelius Gallus, prefect of Egypt, conqueror of Arabia Felix. You have not come here to watch a city die. You believe, in this moment of triumph, that Roman will can reshape any land, tame any desert. You do not understand that the desert does not need to fight you. It only needs to wait, and as it changes your soldiers, your merchants, and your empire, it will conquer you from within. The metamorphosis has already begun. You taste Rome before you see it. The familiar, gritty tang of wood smoke from a million hearths, the faint brine of the Tiber, the sharp scent of wet tufa stone from the aqueducts. After a year in the stark, clean emptiness of the Arabian desert, the city is a sensory assault, a thick, complex stew of humanity. But as your procession moves from the Campus Martius through the triumphal gate, you bring a new scent with you, a fragrance that cuts through the city's ancient perfume and announces a new era. It is the smell of power, but not as Rome has ever known it. This is not the triumph you once imagined. The triumphs of Germanicus or Agrippa were celebrations of martial dominance, their parades filled with thousands of captured warriors, clanking wagons piled high with captured shields and swords, and crude paintings depicting shattered legions and sacked cities. Your triumph is different. It is quieter, more aromatic, more profound. The long lines of prisoners are absent. The desert and disease were the true victors over your men, and you have brought back only a fraction of the force you left with. The captured Marib and his retinue, looking frail and bewildered in their fine white wool, are the only human spoils of war on display. They are not the centerpiece of this parade. The true treasure, the reason for this celebration, is carried on a train of 50 massive wagons, each pulled by 6 powerful oxen. They are not filled with gold or silver. They are heaped with the raw, tear-shaped nodules of resin, ranging in color from milky white to a deep, amberous yellow. It is frankincense and myrrh, a quantity so vast that the Roman mind struggles to comprehend it. Behind the wagons trudges a procession of 100 camels, animals of myth to most Romans, their swaying gait and disdainful expressions drawing gasps from the crowd. Their backs are laden with yet more bounty. Bolts of shimmering silk from the distant Ceres, chests of cinnamon and cardamom, and ivory tusks that hint at a world beyond even Arabia, a world that is now within Rome's grasp. You ride in the traditional triumphal chariot, a golden crown held above your head by a slave who whispers the customary warning in your ear. Memento mori. Remember, you are mortal. But today, the scent that fills your nostrils is the scent of divinity. Your legions have been re-equipped, and their standards, including the eagle of the 22nd, are polished to a brilliant shine. But they are not the focus. All eyes and all noses are on the wealth that follows you. The Via Odoratus, the perfumed road, is what the wits in the Senate have already begun to call the new trade route from Marib to Rome. Today, the name is made literal. Legionaries march alongside the wagons, swinging censers filled with smouldering coals. Upon these coals, they place the lowest grade frankincense, the dust and shavings from the bottoms of the sacks. A thick, sweet, pine-like smoke billows into the streets, a fragrant fog that rolls through the assembled masses. The reaction of the people is a wave you can see and feel. First, confusion, then reverence. This is the scent of the temples, the smell of prayer, the aroma that accompanies the most sacred rites. To smell it in the open street, in such overwhelming abundance, is a religious experience. Women weep, men fall to their knees, not in supplication to you or the distant, watching figure of Augustus, but to the scent itself, as if a god were passing by. They have smelled frankincense before. A single, precious tear's worth dropped onto the altar of a neighborhood shrine. You are showing them a mountain of it. It is a fundamental reordering of their understanding of value and scarcity. You pass a group of merchants, their faces a mixture of awe and calculation. One grips the arm of his companion, his voice a hoarse whisper carried on the perfumed air. He speaks of the price, how it must surely fall now that the source is secured. His friend, a shrewder man with the hard eyes of a speculator, shakes his head. He understands the deeper truth. It is not about price, it is about control. The supply is now Rome's. The market is now Rome's. Entire fortunes will be unmade and remade by this single act of conquest. A new class of men will rise. Men who understand the logistics of camel caravans as well as they understand the shipping lanes of the Mediterranean. You are looking at the conception of the Equites Orientales, the Eastern Knights, though they do not yet have their name. As your procession enters the Forum, the heart of Rome, the full political theatre becomes apparent. You see the senators in their reserved stands, their faces a gallery of carefully composed masks. There is pride, of course, but also envy, and for some, a deep and abiding unease. You lock eyes with Lucius Marcius Philippus, a staunch traditionalist, a man who believes that Roman strength comes from Italian soil and the virtues of the citizen farmer. His face is a thundercloud. He smells not the wealth of the empire, but the corrupting perfume of the East, a sweet rot that will erode the mos maiorum, the ways of the ancestors. He and those like him see an empire turning its face from the hard, honourable battles of the European frontiers toward the soft, sensual, and morally ambiguous riches of these new, sun-drenched lands. The schism that will one day tear the Senate apart begins here, in a curl of fragrant smoke. Then you see Augustus. He is standing on the steps of the temple of the deified Julius, a position of supreme authority. He is not smiling. His expression is one of serene, almost divine, satisfaction. This is his victory more than yours. He is the one who envisioned it, who risked a legion in the desert on a gamble that has paid off beyond anyone's wildest imaginings. He is presenting himself not as a conqueror, but as a provider. He is transforming the Principate, moving it from a position of military first, among equals, to something more akin to an Eastern priest-king, the sole conduit of divine favour and material prosperity. This triumph is a carefully staged piece of propaganda. The procession circles the Forum, the heart of its power and law, now saturated with the alien scent of Arabia. The common people are ecstatic, scooping up fallen nodules of resin from the street as if they were holy relics. They will talk for years of the day the gods emptied their coffers into the city. They do not see the cost. The hundreds of Roman soldiers buried in unmarked desert graves. They see only the prize. They are being taught a new lesson, that the future of Rome lies not in the conquest of peoples, but in the control of commodities. Finally, you reach the Capitoline Hill, the sacred peak of Rome. You dismount from your chariot, the slave's whispers ceasing, and begin the slow climb to the temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus. The captured Sabaean Marib is brought forward. The custom is clear, brutal, and expected. He is to be taken to the Tullianum, the state prison, and ceremonially strangled while you make your sacrifice to Jupiter. It is the grim punctuation mark at the end of every great triumph. But Augustus raises a hand. An aide scurries to your side and whispers new orders. The Sabaean king will be spared. He will be granted a comfortable, permanent exile in a villa in Etruria. It is a stunning break with tradition. It is also a masterful political stroke. Augustus is signalling that this new era is different. The old ways of brutal suppression are to be replaced by a new model: the absorption and pacification of client states. The king is more valuable alive as a symbol of Roman magnanimity and as a source of invaluable information about the trade routes to India than he is dead as a forgotten victim. The traditionalists in the Senate see this clemency not as strength, but as weakness. You enter the temple, its familiar coolness a relief after the heat of the street. The air inside is already heavy with incense from the regular rites, but it is nothing compared to the fragrant cloud your procession has created. You approach the great altar before the colossal statue of Jupiter. Instead of a bull, the traditional sacrifice, a new offering has been prepared. A massive bronze brazier, intricately worked by Alexandrian craftsmen, stands beside the altar. Following the pontiff's instructions, you take a golden platter heaped with the finest, snow-white frankincense, the spoils of the Marib temple, and pour it onto the hot coals. The smoke that rises is impossibly pure, a straight white column that ascends toward the temple's high ceiling. It is a scent that speaks of unimaginable antiquity, of sacred groves and desert moons. For a terrifying moment, it feels as if you are making an offering not to the familiar, bearded sky father of Rome, but to some other, older god, to the moon god Al-Makar in his captured temple, or to the spirit of the desert itself. The soul of the empire is being infused with a new spirit, one born of sand and spice. Rome has conquered Arabia, but the intoxicating, pervasive, and transformative scent of Arabia is now beginning its slow, inexorable conquest of Rome. The man who follows you is not a soldier. His name is Gaius Vibius Mesa, and his hands are soft. He is a creature of the archives and the law courts, a man who believes the universe can be ordered, catalogued, and taxed. He arrives in the newly named province of Arabia, Felix not with a legion, but with a cohort of surveyors, clerks, and jurists, the true army of Roman administration. He is here to transform this wild, conquered land into a proper province, a predictable and profitable part of the imperial machine. You see in his eyes the unwavering Roman certainty that any problem can be solved with a straight road, a clear law, and a well-drawn map. This certainty will not survive the desert. His chosen capital is Marib, the city you took. It is a logical choice, the historical seat of power. Yet the city he finds is a shadow of the one you conquered. With the great dam broken, the life-giving water is gone. The 700-square-mile oasis it sustained is dying. The once lush fields are retreating, surrendering metre by metre back to the insatiable sand. The canals are choked with dust. Marib is a husk, haunted by the ghost of its former glory. Mesa, a practical man, attempts a repair of the dam, bringing in the finest military engineers. They study the structure, marvel at its scale, and draw up plans based on Roman principles of concrete and archways. Their repairs are washed away by the first flash flood of the next rainy season. They lack the generations of accumulated local knowledge, the understanding of the land's subtle violences. The project is abandoned. The desert has won its first victory against the new administration. The first task is to map the province. Mesa's surveyors, men trained in the precise art of centuriation, of dividing land into perfect, orderly squares, are driven to the edge of madness. They set out from Marib with their grome and measuring rods, intending to impose a rational grid upon the landscape. The landscape refuses to cooperate. How do you draw a permanent property line on a sand dune that will have moved 100 paces by the next full moon? How do you map a wadi that is a dry, cracked ravine for 11 months of the year and a raging torrent for one? They present Mesa with beautiful maps, masterpieces of Roman cartography, showing neat squares and Roman place names superimposed over the wilderness. Mesa knows, and the surveyors know, that the maps are a fiction, an act of collective self-deception. They are a map of Roman intentions, not of Arabian reality. The province, outside the few settled towns and the spice groves of the Hadramaut, remains a vast, unknowable blank space. Then comes the question of taxes, the engine of the Roman state. Macer's clerks bring their ledgers and their wax tablets, ready to conduct a census and create a tax roll. They quickly discover the folly of the task. The wealth of Arabia Felix is not in its land, which is mostly barren, nor in its cities, which are few. Its wealth is in two things: the spice trees and the nomads. Taxing the frankincense groves is straightforward. The publicani, the tax farming corporations, descend upon the southern coast with ruthless efficiency, their agents counting every tree, weighing every harvest of resin. The spice flows, and Rome's treasury swells. But the nomads are a different problem entirely. The tribes, the Miniaean, the Catabanian, the Hadramite, do not recognize the concept of a Roman census. They have no fixed address. Their wealth is their livestock, vast herds of camels and goats that are constantly in motion, following the rains and the sparse vegetation. A tax assessor arrives at a well to find a tribe of 500 families, their herds blackening the plain. He spends a week trying to count the animals. When he returns a month later to collect the assessed tax, the tribe is gone, vanished into the desert's shimmering haze, leaving behind only cold campfires and the mocking laughter of the wind. Macer attempts to impose a poll tax, a head tax on every individual. This leads to the first stirrings of rebellion. The tribes do not see themselves as individuals, but as a collective. They are loyal to their sheikh and their clan, not to a distant emperor in a city they have never seen. To them, the census is a profound insult, a violation of their ancient freedoms. Small patrols of Roman auxiliaries sent to enforce the tax simply disappear. They are not defeated in battle. They are swallowed by the sand, their bodies never found. Macer, pragmatic and learning quickly, is forced to abandon direct taxation of the interior. The province of Arabia Felix, on paper a vast territory, is in practice a thin coastal strip and a handful of garrisoned towns. The rest is left to its own devices, a land Rome claims but does not, cannot, truly rule. The law fares no better. A Roman praetor sets up his tribunal in the Forum of Marib, ready to dispense the cool, impartial logic of the 12 tables. His first case is a dispute between two powerful nomadic clans over access to a series of wells. The sheikhs arrive with their entourages of fierce, bearded warriors, their hawk-like eyes filled with contempt for the tiled floors and plastered columns of the Roman court. The praetor asks to see deeds of ownership, to hear testimony about established boundaries. They speak of ancestral rights, of promises made between their great-grandfathers under a full moon, of the complex web of honour and obligation that governs desert life. Roman law, with its focus on written contracts and fixed property, is a language they do not speak. The praetor, sweating in his woolen toga, faces an impossible choice. He can impose a Roman ruling, which will be ignored and will almost certainly lead to a bloody tribal war that his limited garrison cannot contain. Or he can do the unthinkable. He swallows his pride. He dismisses his court and meets with the sheikhs in a tent outside the city walls, sitting on carpets, drinking their bitter, cardamom-spiced coffee. He listens for days as they recount genealogies and ancient precedents. In the end, he does not render a verdict. He mediates a compromise based entirely on their tribal customs, the Uerf. He has kept the peace, but he has done so by abandoning Roman law. It is a quiet, humiliating, and absolutely necessary surrender. This small act, repeated in countless outposts across the province, is the beginning of the great change. Rome is learning that to rule the East, it must first be ruled by the East. Even the roads, the ultimate symbol of Roman power, fail. The legionary engineers, the finest in the world, lay a magnificent paved road from Marib toward the port of Cana. It is a masterpiece of engineering, straight as a spear shaft. Within a year, it is impassable. Sandstorms bury entire sections miles deep. The seasonal floods undermine its foundations. The relentless sun cracks the paving stones. The locals, meanwhile, continue to use their ancient caravan tracks, paths that wind and twist, but which follow the high ground, avoid the floodplains, and connect the all-important wells. The Romans are forced to adapt. They abandon their grand road-building schemes and instead build a new kind of infrastructure, a network of fortified castra at each major well, projecting power not in a continuous line, but in a series of strategic dots. They are not controlling the land, merely the water, the source of all life. You see Mesa a year after his arrival. He is a different man. The ink stains are still on his fingers, but his face is tanned and lined by the sun, and his eyes have lost their absolute certainty. He is writing a report to the Senate, a document you know will be a masterpiece of political spin. He will write of the successful pacification of the province, the secure flow of spice revenue, the establishment of Roman order. He will not write about the abandoned maps, the uncollectible taxes, the unenforceable laws, the buried roads. He will not tell them that he rules the province by deferring to its customs, by adapting Roman methods until they are Roman in name only. He has learned the desert's great lesson. The desert cannot be conquered by force. It is too vast, too patient. It cannot be tamed by order. It is fundamentally chaotic. It can only be survived, and only by yielding to its rhythms, by respecting its ancient ways. The province is a success, but it is a Roman failure. It is the first place where the rigid, monolithic idea of Romanitas has been forced to bend. The sand, the spice, the ancient customs, they are like a dye dropped into the clear water of the empire. The change is imperceptible at first, but the water is no longer clear. A new colour is spreading. Arabia Felix is not being Romanized. Rome is beginning to be Arabianized. The world has been bleached of all colour. You are stationed at Castra Ventorum, the fort of the winds, a name that is a cruel joke 9 months of the year, when not even a whisper of a breeze stirs the oppressive heat. The fort is one of the new links in the chain of garrisons described by Governor Mesa, a speck of Roman order in an ocean of sand and sky. The walls are not the proud stone of a European fortress, but a lower, thicker construction of sun-dried brick mixed with straw, the same material the locals have used for millennia. From the top of the watchtower, you can see nothing in any direction but the shimmering, heat-distorted horizon. There are no forests, no rivers, no rolling green hills. There is only the sand, the rock, and the sun. You are Quintus, a legionary of the 22nd Deotariana, a veteran of the siege of Marib. You survived the thirst, the disease, and the brief, bloody battle. Now you find yourself fighting a new enemy. The silence. It is a profound, ringing silence that presses in on the ears, broken only by the wind when it does blow. A hot, abrasive rasp that sounds like the world being scraped down to the bone. In this silence, a man is left alone with his thoughts. And your thoughts are of your daughter, Livia, 5,000 miles away, in a small village on the outskirts of Alexandria. The last letter from your wife, delivered by the monthly supply caravan, was 6 weeks ago. The words are seared into your memory. A fever, a persistent cough. The doctors have tried everything. The letter was a plea for you to pray, to make offerings, to petition the gods. And you have. Every day, you have gone to the fort's small, prefabricated shrine, the Sacellum, where the standards are kept. You have made your offerings to Jupiter, to Apollo the healer, to your own family's lairs. You have poured out libations of the precious, rationed wine, and whispered the ancient prayers your father taught you. But the gods of Rome feel distant here. Their power seems to belong to a world of marble temples and fertile fields, a world of water and shade. Out here, under the merciless glare of the Arabian sun, your prayers feel like they are being absorbed by the sand before they can even ascend to the heavens. The men feel it too. They are veterans, disciplined and tough, but the desert is leeching something from them. Their tempers are short. They perform their duties with a lethargic, weary precision. They are men adrift. They are no longer the confident conquerors of Marib. They are survivors. clinging to a routine that is the only thing keeping the vast, empty landscape from swallowing them whole. Your only regular contact with the outside world, aside from the Roman supply train, is a Nabatean trader named Malachus. He is a man of the desert, his skin the colour of burnished leather, his face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by sun and wind. He brings dates, camel's milk, and news from the other tribes in exchange for Roman grain and pottery. He is tolerated by your centurion, Decimus, because his goods are a welcome supplement to the monotonous army rations, and his information is often more reliable than the official dispatches. One evening, you find Malachus gazing at a large, peculiar rock formation a half-mile from the fort. It is a pillar of black, wind-scoured stone that stands alone on the plain, looking like a forgotten god's thumb. He sees you approaching and gestures to the rock with his chin. He says, his Latin accented but clear, "You build your square houses for your square gods, but you do not see the real power, the power that is already here. You scoff," the reflexive response of a Roman soldier. "That's just a rock, old man. To you it is a rock," he replies, his dark eyes twinkling. "To my grandfather, and his grandfather before him, it is the seat of the master of the winds. When the hot simoon blows for too long, we leave an offering, a bit of water, a handful of salt. We ask him to be merciful. Sometimes he listens. You feel a prickle of unease. It is blasphemy, of course. Superstition. The kind of backward nonsense you are here to civilize. Yet, you think of the relentless, suffocating heat. You think of your daughter's feverish body. So far away, the Roman gods are silent. Perhaps they cannot hear you from this desolate place. But the master of the winds, he is here. The idea takes root in your mind, a dangerous, desperate seed. For days, you fight it. You are a Roman. You worship the gods of the state, the gods of your ancestors. To acknowledge this pagan spirit in a rock, is a betrayal. But then another caravan arrives, and there is a new letter for you. Livia is weaker. The doctors have given up hope. Your wife's words are a cry of despair that echoes the desolation in your own heart. That night, you can't sleep. The air in the barracks is thick and stagnant. The breathing of the other men is a constant, suffocating rhythm. The silence outside the walls seems to be calling your name. Desperation, the most powerful acid, finally dissolves the bonds of your Roman piety. You rise, take your water skin and a small pouch of salt from your rations, and slip out of the fort. The desert at night is a different world. The moon is a sliver of bone in a sky sprayed with more stars than you have ever seen. The air is cool, almost cold. The silence is no longer oppressive, but watchful. Alive. You walk toward the black stone, your sandals crunching softly on the gravelly sand. The stone is larger, up close, humming with a strange energy in the moonlight. There are faint, ancient carvings near its base, symbols you do not recognize. You feel a profound sense of trespass, of stepping into a place where you do not belong. You almost turn back, but the image of Livia, pale and struggling for breath, flashes in your mind. You unstopper your water skin. Water is life here, more precious than wine, more valuable than your daily pay. You pour a small amount onto the base of the rock. It vanishes instantly, absorbed by the thirsty stone and sand. You then take a pinch of salt and sprinkle it where the water fell. You do not know the right words, the proper rituals, so you speak from the heart, your voice a ragged whisper in the immense silence. "Master of this place," you begin, the words feeling foreign and clumsy on your tongue. "My gods are far away. My daughter is dying. If you have any power here, if you can hear me, take this offering. Cool her fever. Let her breathe. I will honor you." You stand there for a long time, feeling foolish and exposed. With a heavy heart, you turn and walk back to the fort, feeling hollowed out, certain you have committed a meaningless act of sacrilege. 2 weeks pass. Life returns to its monotonous rhythm. You try to forget your nocturnal visit to the stone, ashamed of your moment of weakness. Then, the supply caravan arrives. There is a letter. You take it with trembling hands, expecting the worst. You break the wax seal. Your wife's handwriting is shaky, but the words are clear. Livia is alive. More than alive, she is well. On the very night you made your offering, the fever broke. Suddenly, inexplicably. She woke up the next morning, weak but lucid, and asked for a drink of water. The doctors are calling it a miracle. Your wife calls it the answer to her prayers. You stand under the brutal sun, the letter clutched in your hand, and you begin to weep. They are tears of relief, of joy, but also of profound, earth-shattering confusion. Was it Jupiter? Was it Apollo? Or was it the nameless power in a pillar of black stone? You do not know, but you are a soldier, a practical man. You have seen a result. That evening, you return to the stone. And this time, you leave a larger offering of water and one of the dried figs from your rations. You do not tell anyone what you have done, but secrets have a way of spreading in the claustrophobic confines of a desert fort. Your friend, Marcus, whose wife has been unable to conceive a child, notices the change in your demeanor. He asks you about the letter. You tell him the truth. At first, he is skeptical. Then, a week later, you see him walking out toward the stone as dusk falls. Then another soldier, a Gaul whose brother is fighting on the Rhine frontier, does the same. It is never spoken of openly. There is no official rite, but a new custom is born. A small pile of offerings begins to accumulate at the base of the stone. A polished river rock from a distant homeland, a piece of hardtack biscuit, a bent iron nail. Your centurion, Decimus, is no fool. He sees the men walking out at night. He sees the offerings. His first instinct is to forbid it, to enforce the proper worship of the Roman pantheon. He is a man of the old ways. But he also notices a change in his men. The tension in the barracks has eased. The listlessness is gone, replaced by a quiet, private hope. Morale, that most intangible and essential of military assets, is higher than it has been in months. Like the praetor in Marib who chose to mediate rather than adjudicate, Decimus makes a pragmatic choice. He says nothing. He does not condone it, but he does not condemn it. By his silence, he allows it. He understands that this is no longer Gaul or Britannia. To survive, a Roman must learn to adapt not just his tactics and his equipment, but his soul. The metamorphosis is happening, not in a temple or a senate house, but here, in the heart of a single, desperate soldier, multiplied across 100 lonely outposts, where the gods of Rome seem very far away, and the power of the land is very, very close. The port of Eudaemon does not smell of the sea. Not the familiar, clean brine of Ostia, or the fish market tang of Puteoli. Here, at the gateway to the Erythraean Sea, the air is a thick cocktail of scorched volcanic rock, roasting coffee beans from the nearby highlands, and the omnipresent, cloying sweetness of raw frankincense being loaded onto merchant ships. The city, now refortified and renamed Portus Augustus Felix, is crammed into the crater of an extinct volcano, a perfect natural harbour. But for you, Rear Admiral Gaius Livius Drusus, a man who has spent 30 years in the orderly, predictable world of the Mediterranean, it is a vision of Hades. The black, jagged rock of the crater walls radiates a ferocious heat, and the sun beats down with a white, punishing intensity that makes the sky itself seem like a furnace lid. You are the first commander of the Classis Orientalis, the Eastern Fleet, a naval force that exists, for now, more on paper than on the water. Your mission, personally dictated to you by Augustus before you left Rome, is absolute: to secure the sea lanes from the mouth of the Red Sea to the coast of India. The river of wealth flowing from Arabia, Felix, is vulnerable. Pirates, operating from hidden coves along the Yemeni and Somali coasts, bleed the trade with 1,000 small cuts. More concerning are the whispers of rival powers, the Parthians seeking access to the sea, the growing kingdoms of the Indus Valley who might one day wish to challenge Rome's newfound monopoly. The perfumed road must be protected, and that protection must begin here, on the water, Your first challenge is the ocean itself. It is a living, breathing entity, utterly unlike the tame, landlocked sea of your experience. Your Greek navigators, men who can sail from Alexandria to Crete with their eyes closed, are humbled here. They speak of the monsoon, a great seasonal wind that blows from the southwest for half the year, then reverses and blows from the northeast for the other half. To sail these waters is not simply a matter of rowing against the wind. It is a matter of surrendering to this immense, planetary rhythm. To miss the monsoon is to be stranded for 6 months or risk being lost in the open ocean. The ships you have are a joke. A squadron of standard Liburnian biremes, the fast, light galleys that won the Battle of Actium. They were disassembled in Alexandria, hauled overland to the Red Sea, and reassembled, a monumental feat of logistics. They are built for the short, choppy waves of the Mediterranean. They are designed for coastal raiding and ramming tactics in relatively confined waters. Out on the long, rolling swells of the Indian Ocean, they are unstable, their hulls strained, their low freeboards swamped by waves. And their primary weapon, the ram, is irrelevant in a theatre of operations where the distances are vast and the enemy is a swarm of swift, lateen-rigged dhows that can outsail you with ease. The second challenge is the wood, or the lack of it. Arabia is a treeless wasteland. The native acacia wood is gnarled and brittle, useless for keels or planking. Your chief shipwright, a grim-faced Brutian named Cassian, delivers the bad news in his first report. The tropical waters are infested with Teredo navalis, the shipworm, a mollusk that can honeycomb a pine hull in a matter of months. Your Mediterranean-built ships are literally being eaten alive from beneath you. For months, your command is a study in frustration. You establish patrols in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Gate of Tears, and you capture a few pirate vessels through sheer luck and overwhelming numbers. But for every one you catch, 3 slip past in the night. You are a man tasked with building a fortress wall in a river of sand. The breakthrough comes not from Roman ingenuity, but from Roman humility, a quality you are only now learning to cultivate. On the advice of the provincial governor, you summon the master shipbuilders of the region. They are not Romans. They are Yemenis from the Hadramaut coast, Indians from Baragaza, even a few grizzled Greeks whose families have been sailing these waters since the time of Alexander. They gather in the shade of a large warehouse, the air thick with the smell of teak oil and caulking pitch. You, through an interpreter, lay out your problem. You need a warship, one that can remain at sea for months at a time, that can withstand the monsoon, that can outfight the pirate dhows, and that can survive the ravenous worms. An old Indian shipwright, his skin as dark and cracked as old timber, speaks first. He dismisses your pine and fir planking. He speaks of teak, a wood so dense and oily that the worms cannot gain purchase. Teak, he explains, must be brought from the Malabar coast, a journey of thousands of miles. He speaks of a different way of building, not with mortise and tenon joints, but with planks that are sewn together with coconut fibre rope. This makes the hull stronger and more flexible, able to ride the great ocean swells rather than fight them. A Hadrami captain, a man who has sailed the monsoon winds his entire life, scoffs at your square sails. He unrolls a piece of canvas and, with a few deft folds, demonstrates the principle of the lateen sail, the triangular rigging that has dominated these seas for centuries. He explains how it can harness the wind from the side, allowing a ship to tack against the prevailing monsoon, giving it a freedom of movement your galleys could never achieve. You listen. You and Cassian, your shipwright, listen for days. You suppress your Roman pride, your innate belief in the superiority of Roman engineering. You recognize the truth in their words, a truth born from 1,000 years of experience. You make a decision that will be criticized in the Senate but will change the course of history. Not a Roman ship, not an Arabian dhow, but a hybrid, a synthesis of the best of both worlds. The result, launched 6 months later, is the first of its class. Built for strength and to support the weight of soldiers and artillery. But her planking is Indian teak, sewn together in the local style. She has 2 masts, both bearing the revolutionary Latine sails. She is deeper in the draft than a Liburnian, more stable in open water. Her bow is reinforced, but her primary armament is a forecastle, an aftercastle, packed with archers and 2 light scorpions, the rapid-fire Roman artillery pieces. She is a weapons platform, designed for long-range dominance and maneuver. She even carries a small contingent of marines for boarding actions, but her main purpose is to control the sea from a distance. Her sea trials are a revelation. She is faster than anything you have ever commanded. With the Latine sails, she can sail closer to the wind, giving her a tactical flexibility that feels like magic. Her crew is as hybrid as the ship itself. A Roman captain and marine detachment, a Greek navigator, a Yemeni pilot, and a mixed crew of Egyptian and Nabatean sailors who know the Red Sea like the backs of their hands. The first real test comes 2 months later. A report arrives from a merchant vessel that was attacked near the island of Socotra, a notorious pirate haven. You dispatch the Sagitta Maris and 2 sister ships that have just been completed. You sail with them. You find the pirates a fleet of 8 large dhows dividing their spoils in a sheltered cove. They see you coming and sail out to meet you, confident in their numbers and their speed. It is a fatal miscalculation. Your new ships, the Dromon Orientalis as the sailors have nicknamed them, are in a different class. Your scorpions open fire at a range the pirates cannot match, hurling bolts with deadly accuracy, shattering their steering oars and tearing through their light hulls. The pirates' own archers fire back, their arrows falling harmlessly into the sea. The battle is a massacre, a clinical and brutal demonstration of superior technology. Within an hour, 4 of the pirate dhows are sunk and the other 4 have been boarded by your marines. As you sail back to Eudaemon, the captured pirate ships trailing behind you, you stand on the aftercastle of the Sagitta Maris and look east, toward the open, endless horizon of the Indian Ocean. The wind in the great triangular sail above you is steady and strong, pulling you toward a new destiny. You came here to impose Roman naval power on a new sea. Instead, the new sea has imposed its will on you, forcing you to adapt, to innovate, to create something entirely new. You have not just built a fleet, you have forged a key, and you have unlocked the door to India and all the lands beyond. The strategic centre of the Roman world, which for 1,000 years has been the Mediterranean, is beginning its slow, inexorable shift eastward. The metamorphosis has taken to the water. The standards of the Legion are housed in a small, perfectly constructed Roman temple at the centre of the fortress. It is a building of imported Italian marble, a defiant statement of cultural permanence set against the shifting sands. Here, you, Lucius Vorenus, centurion of the 3rd cohort, perform the rites your father and his father performed. You make the offerings to Jupiter, Optimus, Maximus, to Mars, the Avenger, and to the divine genius of the Emperor. The words of the prayers are a familiar weight on your tongue, a link to the eternal order of Rome. Yet, you feel nothing. The gods are here, encased in this marble box, but their power seems unable to penetrate the walls and touch the land outside. The soldiers go through the motions with you, their faces impassive, their piety a function of discipline, not faith. It is a duty, not a communion. This is Legio 3 Cyrenaica. Transferred to the southern reaches of Arabia Felix to guard the precious frankincense groves. Your fortress, Castra Odorata, is a much larger and more permanent installation than the lonely outposts of the deep desert. But the spiritual emptiness is the same. The sun here is a physical force, a hammer that beats down from a white-hot sky. The nights are filled with a profound, star-dusted silence that unnerves men used to the sounds of civilization. Your legionaries are the best in the empire, but you see the subtle fraying of their souls, the psychological toll of existing in a place that feels so utterly alien, so devoid of the familiar spirits of field, stream, and forest that populate the Roman spiritual landscape. Then you begin to notice the unofficial altars. They are small, discreet things, tucked away in the corners of the barracks or behind the workshops. They are not grand statues, but humble objects. A piece of black volcanic glass that holds the sun's heat, a strangely shaped piece of driftwood from the distant coast, a collection of bleached animal skulls arranged in a geometric pattern. The soldiers, veterans of the desert patrols, have brought the practices of the lonely outposts with them. They are giving names to the nameless powers they encountered in the wilderness. Sol Indiges, the native Sunday, Tellus Eterna, the eternal earth. They are Roman names, desperate attempts to fit these new, raw divinities into their existing worldview. But the beings they invoke are not Roman. They are the spirits of this place, the genius loci. You see it as a discipline problem, a creeping rot of superstition. You know you cannot punish hundreds of men for a private, silent belief. Not when their performance on the drill field and the patrol line remains impeccable. In fact, the men who maintain these small shrines seem more grounded. They have found a way to make peace with the landscape, to feel a part of it, rather than an intruder upon it. The change comes with the arrival of the new legate, Tiberius Claudius Balbus. He is not a typical senator general, serving a brief term before returning to the political games of Rome. He is a professional soldier, a veteran of the German frontier, but he is also something more, a high-ranking initiate in the cult of Sol Invictus, the Unconquered Sunday. In Rome, the cult is a respectable but minor faith, one among many Eastern mystery religions popular with the military. Here, in Arabia, Balbus finds not a minor cult, but a landscape that is the living embodiment of his god. Balbus is a keen observer. He walks the fortress, speaks to the common soldiers, and he sees the secret altars. His junior officers expect him to react with fury, to purge the legion of these un-Roman practices. He does the opposite. He convenes a meeting of all centurions. You see superstition, he tells you, his voice calm and authoritative as he stands before a map of the province. I see a thirst for the divine. Our men are stationed in the heart of the sun's own kingdom. The official gods feel distant to them. Why? Because our rites are designed for the shadowed groves of Italy, not for this crucible of light. The men are not turning away from the gods. They are trying to find them where they live. He points to a spot on the map just outside the fortress walls. A low, flat-topped mesa. We will build a new temple, he declares. Not to Jupiter. He has his house. We will build a temple to Sol Invictus, the patron of our empire and the manifest power of this land. The temple he builds is unlike any you have ever seen. It is not an enclosed building, but a vast, circular courtyard open to the sky. The walls are low, made of local red sandstone. In the center, on a raised dais, is a single, massive altar of polished black basalt, the same stone as the sacred rocks you saw the men worshipping in the deep desert. There is no statue. Balbus insists that the god needs no graven image here. His presence is the sun itself. The only iconography is the solar disk, a radiant crown of Roman sunbeams, but it is inscribed within a series of interlocking squares and triangles, the geometric art of the Nabateans and Sabaeans. It is a fusion, a deliberate and calculated act of religious engineering. The first ceremony is held at dawn. The entire legion is assembled. You stand with your cohort, your traditionalist Roman heart filled with a deep sense of unease. This feels like a surrender. But as the sun's first rays crest the eastern mountains, a profound change occurs. Balbus, dressed not in a general's armor, but in the simple white robes of a priest, ascends the dais. He does not chant a long, formal prayer in Latin. "Behold your God," he says, his voice ringing with genuine fervor. He is not in a statue. He is not in a book. He is here. He is the light that warms you, the fire that tests you, the power that makes this land holy. He is the unconquered son of Rome, and this is his throne. He then begins a new rite, one he has clearly designed himself. It is a synthesis. It includes the familiar discipline of a Roman legion, with the cohorts saluting the rising sun as they would their general. But it also includes a period of silent contemplation, a practice he learned from the local mystics, where the men simply stand and absorb the sun's energy. He anoints the altar not with wine, but with a few drops of precious frankincense oil, honouring the sacred product of the province. The smoke that rises is not the thick, cloying smoke of a temple, but a thin, pure ribbon of scent that ascends into the limitless blue sky. You watch the faces of your men. The apathy is gone. The dull obedience is gone. In its place is a look of awe, of connection. For the first time, their religion is not something they perform within a dark box. The terrifying, oppressive sun has been transformed from an enemy into a patron deity. They have been given a language to understand their existence here, a way to find meaning in the heat and the dust. Over the next few months, the cult of the reborn sun, as the men call it, becomes the centre of the Legion's life. The old temple of Jupiter is still maintained, but it becomes a place of state ceremony, while the open-air temple of the sun is where the men go to find their faith. The grassroots worship of the sacred rocks and desert spirits is not extinguished. Instead, it is absorbed, given a formal structure and a Roman name. The Master of the Winds becomes Sol Invictus. Dominus Ventorum, the Spirit of the Sands, becomes Sol Invictus. Pater Irenae. All the local powers are now seen as mere aspects, mere emanations of the one, supreme solar deity. It is a theology that is both perfectly Roman in its impulse to organize and catalogue, and profoundly Arabian in its reverence for the singular, overwhelming power of the desert sun. You remain a skeptic for a long time. You are Lucius Vorenus, a man of the old ways. You see the danger in this fervour, this blending of the sacred rites of Rome with the customs of the conquered. But one evening, you are overseeing a punishment detail. A young recruit, a boy from the rainy hills of Umbria, has been caught sleeping on watch. A capital offence. He is to be flogged. As he is tied to the post, he is shaking not just with fear, but with a malarial fever. As the first lash is about to fall, the boy cries out, not to Jupiter. Balbus, the legate, happens to be walking past. He stops the punishment. He looks at the boy, then at the setting sun, a great ball of orange fire on the horizon. The sun god is a god of justice, but also of mercy, Balbus says, his voice quiet but carrying to every man present. He asks for discipline, not for a futile death. The boy will serve his punishment in the infirmary until his fever breaks, and then he will serve double duties for a month. It is an act of clemency that should, by the harsh logic of the legions, undermine discipline. Instead, it inspires a fierce, unwavering loyalty in the men. They see that this new God, this new faith, is not just about power, but about a form of compassion that is suited to the harsh realities of their lives. Later that night, unable to sleep, you walk to the new temple. It is empty, bathed in the cool light of the moon and stars. You stand before the great black altar and you look up at the sky. For the first time, you do not feel like a stranger in a hostile land. The old gods are silent, but this new power, this synthesis, is alive. It is working. It is changing your legion, changing your men, and, you are forced to admit, it is changing you. The metamorphosis is no longer something you can simply observe. It is happening inside you. The marble of your villa in Alexandria is cool under your bare feet. A constant, pleasant surprise in a city that lives in a perpetual humid sweat. From your terrace, you can see the great lighthouse of Pharos, its polished bronze mirrors gathering the morning sun into a blinding spear of light. Below, the harbour is a frantic, chaotic ballet of commerce. You can distinguish the ships by their cargo even at this distance. The low-riding grain barges from the Nile, the lumbering amphorae carriers from Crete, and, most importantly, the sleek, teak-hulled dromons of your own fleet, the Eudaemon line, riding high in the water, their holds emptied of the spices, silks, and ivories that are the source of your colossal wealth. You are Gaius Fulvius Cinna, though the name on your birth records, written in Aramaic in a dusty archive in Palmyra, is closer to Gad ben Falah. You are a Roman citizen of the second generation. Your father was a camel trader who grew rich, ferrying goods between the Parthian frontier and the Mediterranean. He purchased citizenship for his family, a transactional act that gave you a Roman name, a Roman education, and a Roman ambition that dwarfed his own. You are the new man, a creature of this new era. You are an ex orientalis, a knight of the East. Your business is not trade. Trade is for shopkeepers. Your business is control. You control the means of trade. You own the ships that brave the monsoons. You own the warehouses that line the harbours of Eudaemon and Cana. You own the thousands of camels that form the caravans traversing the deserts. Their routes protected not by Roman legions, whom you find to be slow and unreliable, but by your own private army of loyal Nabatean and Etrurian guards. You control the flow of information, the reports from agents in the distant port of Muziris on the Malabar coast, the whispers from spies in the courts of the desert sheikhs. You are not a merchant. You are a river, and the wealth of the East flows through you. A servant, a silent Nubian, in a white linen tunic, enters your study and places a small, steaming cup of black, bitter liquid on the table beside you. It is coffee, a bean grown in the highlands of Arabia, Felix, a new delicacy that is becoming the preferred drink of your class. It sharpens the mind, unlike the wine that dulls the senses of the old aristocracy in Rome. Your study is not the austere space of a Roman patrician. There are no busts of grim-faced ancestors. Instead, the walls are covered with vast, detailed maps, one of the Arabian Peninsula, marked with every known well and tribal territory, another of the Indian Ocean, its monsoon patterns drawn as great, swirling arrows. The air is scented with a light, clean fragrance of sandalwood, burned in a silver brazier in the corner. Your chief accountant, a meticulous Greek named Theophanes, enters with a stack of wax tablets. The grain shipment for Legio 3 Cyrenaica has been dispatched from Pelusium, he reports. The legate sends his gratitude and a promise of prompt payment from the provincial treasury. You wave a dismissive hand. The treasury is always slow. Send a note to Legate Balbus. Tell him his promptness in paying his debts is a testament to the discipline of his legion. And tell him my agents report that the new temple to Sol Invictus is a magnificent success. I am sending a personal donation of 5 talents of silver for its upkeep and a cask of the finest white frankincense for its altar. His faith does him credit. Theophanes makes a note, his stylus flying across the wax. He understands the transaction perfectly. You are not merely a supplier to the Roman army, you are its patron. The legions in the East are becoming more dependent on your logistical network than on the states. And by supporting Balbus's new religious movement, you are fostering a local power base, a military culture that is loyal not just to the idea of Rome, but to the new, Eastern reality of the empire you are helping to build. And the shipment of Parthian silk? You ask. It has reached Petra, Theophanes says. But Sheikh Rabil of the Kinder tribe is demanding a higher transit fee. He has blocked the pass at Makran. You smile. This is the part of the business you truly enjoy, the part that separates you from the simpletons who think wealth is merely a matter of buying low and selling high. Sheikh Rabil has a new, younger wife who is fond of emeralds. Does he not? You ask. Theophanes nods. And his eldest son fancies himself a great horseman. Send a message to my agent in Petra, you command. Have a necklace of the finest Indian emeralds delivered to the sheikh's wife. A gift, in celebration of her beauty. And send the son a pure-blooded Cappadocian stallion. A gift, in recognition of his skill. Do not mention the silk. Do not mention the transit fees. Then, send a second message to Sheikh Malik of the Ghassanids. Inform him that the route through his territory is looking very appealing, and that a long-term contract for all my Parthian trade could be most profitable for him. This is how you rule. Not with the clumsy, overt force of a legion, but with the subtle, irresistible pressures of greed, vanity, and rivalry. You are not conquering the desert tribes. You are harnessing their ancient conflicts and desires, making them strands in your own vast web. You learned this from your father, and you have perfected it. The real threat to your power does not come from desert sheikhs. It comes from Rome. He reports that the old guard in the Senate, the faction led by men like Marcius Philippus, is stirring. They are horrified by your kind. They see your wealth as un-Roman, your influence as a cancer on the Republic's traditions. They are proposing a new law, the Lex de Agro Italico, a bill that would prohibit any man of equestrian rank from holding a state contract, such as supplying a legion, unless at least half of his personal wealth is invested in agricultural land within Italy. It is a dagger aimed directly at your heart. Your wealth is fluid, dynamic. It is in ships, in camels, in warehouses stuffed with perishable goods. To tie it up in Italian farmland would be to destroy your ability to operate. It is a desperate attempt by the landed aristocracy to clip the wings of your new, trade-based power block. Theophanes sees the grim look on your face. The old dinosaurs are roaring, you say, tossing the letter onto the table. They think they can legislate us out of existence. They think the world is still run from their dusty Senate house. You walk to the terrace, the sounds and smells of the harbour washing over you. For a moment, you feel a flicker of anger. You and your kind are the ones fueling the empire's new prosperity. The grain you ship helps feed the Roman mob. The taxes paid on your goods fill the state's coffers. The supplies you provide keep the legions on the frontier from starving. And for this, the patricians despise you. They call you a Syrian, a spicemonger, a polluter of Roman virtue. But the anger passes, replaced by a cold, clear focus. They have chosen to fight you in their arena, the Senate. You will fight them in yours, the marketplace. Theophanes, you call out, your voice sharp with new purpose. Take this down, a message to all our partners in the Eastern guilds. Suspend all new shipments of luxury goods to Italy. All of them. The price of silk, pepper, and high-grade incense is to be tripled, effective immediately. Inform the Publicani in Arabia that there will be unforeseen logistical delays in the next frankincense harvest. The supply to the temples in Rome will be reduced by half. Theophanes' eyes go wide. My lord, that will cause chaos. The priests will be furious. The wealthy matrons will riot if they cannot get their perfumes and spices. Precisely, you say, a predatory smile touching your lips. The senators want to remind us where the power lies. We shall do the same for them. Let them explain to the priests why the gods are being denied their proper offerings. Let them explain to their wives why their luxuries have vanished. Let them feel the consequences of their arrogance. You then dictate a second set of instructions, these for your agents in Rome. Double the usual gifts to the prefect of the Praetorian Guard. Ensure his men are paid well and reminded who their benefactors are. And finally, send a list of 10 promising young politicians, men from outside the traditional families, who might be receptive to a new patron. This is the new form of Roman politics. It is not fought with speeches in the forum, but with economic warfare and the silent purchase of influence. The old guard can have their traditions, their ancestral farms, their crumbling ideal of the citizen soldier. You are building a new kind of empire, an empire of commerce, logistics, and capital, whose true centre is not the Palatine Hill, but the bustling, cosmopolitan, relentlessly forward-looking cities of the East. You, and the new class of Eastern Equites you represent, are the future, and you are not asking for a seat at their table. You are building a bigger, richer table of your own. The air in the atrium of Domitia Lepida's villa on the Quirinal Hill is thick enough to drink. It is a humid, heavy concoction of floral perfume, sweat, expensive wine, and, above all, the pervasive, almost suffocating aroma of burning spices. A dozen bronze tripods, scattered among the marble statues and fern-filled planters, send up thin, constant plumes of smoke, cinnamon, and a low-grade frankincense that smells faintly of turpentine. The supply of the good Sabaean resin Domitia was complaining to you just moments ago, has mysteriously dried up, and the price for what little remains has become obscene, a crisis for a hostess of her standing. You are Senator Decimus Junius Silanus, a man of middling influence and ancient lineage, and you feel a headache forming behind your eyes. You have come to this dinner party, as you come to all such gatherings, as a matter of political necessity. But tonight, the experience is particularly jarring. It is as if the city itself is suffering from a fever, and this room is the epicenter of its delirium. The fashions are the first thing you notice. The men, your fellow senators and knights, are no longer content with the simple, austere white of the traditional toga. Theirs are shot through with threads of gold or dyed in shades of Tyrian purple that were once reserved for triumphs and religious rites. Many have abandoned the toga altogether in favour of the synthesis, a more comfortable, brightly coloured dinner garment. But tonight you see something new. Several of the younger men are wearing flowing robes of shimmering, impossibly light silk, a fabric that whispers of Parthian caravans and the immense, mysterious lands of the Ceres. It is soft, effeminate, and utterly un-Roman. The women are even more ostentatious. Domitia herself is a constellation of foreign influences. Her hair is dusted with gold powder in the Egyptian style. Her eyes are lined with kohl, and her arms are a jangling collection of Indian bangles. Her dress is a vibrant orange silk that leaves one shoulder bare, a fashion more suited to a courtesan in Antioch than a Roman matron. The wealth of the East is not just flowing into the treasury. It is being worn, literally, on the sleeves of the Roman elite. The conversation around you is a similar hybrid. The language is Latin, of course. Men use Greek phrases to sound philosophical and slip in Aramaic words they picked up from their new business partners to sound cosmopolitan and well-connected. They speak not of harvests and land values, the traditional concerns of their class, but of monsoon timetables, the price of pepper in Baragaza, and the political stability of the Hadramaut kingdom. They are men whose minds have migrated east, even if their bodies remain in Rome. You find your old friend, Lucius Marcius Philippus. He is the leader of your faction, the boni, the good men who still believe in the old ways, the mos maiorum. He clutches a goblet of wine, but you know it is more of a prop than a pleasure. "Look at them, Decimus," he murmurs as you approach, his voice a low growl. "They are like children playing dress-up in their parents' finery. Only the finery is not Roman. It is the plunder of a conquered culture. And it is conquering us in turn. We have become a city of spice-mongers and perfume merchants." His bitterness is a familiar comfort in this alien environment. The priests of the Capitoline Temple are in an uproar over the lack of high-quality frankincense for the sacred rites. The city's wealthy are hoarding what spices they have, and the price of a pound of pepper has exceeded that of a pound of gold. Philippus and his allies see it as a sign of the fragility of this new economy, this dependence on foreign luxuries. You and he suspect something more sinister, a deliberate manipulation, a show of force by the unseen powers who control the new trade, the Eastern Equites. The law will bring them to heel, you say, trying to sound more confident than you feel. You are referring to his proposed legislation, the Lex de Agro Italico, the bill to force these new money knights to invest in Italian land, to tie their fortunes to the soil of the Republic, to make them, in essence, more Roman. Philippus lets out a short, humourless laugh. The law? The law is for sale, my friend. Have you not noticed? Young Cornelius Lentulus, whose family estates were on the verge of bankruptcy a year ago, and yesterday, in the Senate, he spoke with the passion of a convert about the dynamic new patterns of imperial commerce. He is bought and paid for. He is not the only one. The conversation is cut short as your hostess claps her hands for attention. Slaves bring in the main course. It is not the roasted boar or simple grilled fish of a traditional Roman feast. It is a dozen peacocks, their iridescent tail feathers reattached after cooking, their bodies stuffed with a mixture of dates, nuts, and exotic spices that fills the room with another wave of powerful, foreign scent. The dish is a spectacle of waste and novelty, a perfect symbol of the new Rome. The next day, in the Senate, the battle is joined. The Curia Hostilia, the ancient Senate house, feels like the last bastion of true Roman identity. Its stone benches are hard. Its air is cool and smells only of old stone and aging documents. Here, the traditions still hold sway. Philippus takes the floor. He does not shout. His voice is measured, freighted with the gravity of his lineage and his convictions. He speaks of the ancestors, of Cincinnatus leaving his plough to save the Republic. He speaks of Roman strength being rooted in the land, in the discipline of the citizen farmer who becomes the citizen soldier. He decries the new wealth as rootless and corrupting. A river of gold that flows from decadent, effeminate cultures and brings their vices with it. We are building an empire of luxuries, an empire of scents and silks, he declares, his voice resonating in the chamber. But an empire that can be brought to its knees by a pirate in the Erythraean Sea or a greedy sheikh blocking a desert pass has no foundation. This law is not about economics, it is about character. It is about restoring the spine to a republic that is becoming dangerously soft, dangerously dependent on things that are not Roman. It is a powerful speech, and it moves the older, more traditional members of the Senate. You can see them nodding in agreement, their faces grim. Then, Cornelius Lentulus is given the floor. He is young, handsome, and impeccably dressed in a toga of the finest, whitest wool. He does not speak of the ancestors, he speaks of the future. The noble senator Philippus speaks with the passion of a time now past. Lentulus begins, his voice smooth and confident. He speaks of an empire of farms, but we are now an empire of cities, an empire that spans 3 continents. Our strength is no longer just in the soil of Italy, but in the ingenuity of our merchants, the bravery of our sailors, the magnificent new arteries of commerce that bring the world's bounty to our doorstep. He uses the Equites' own talking points, framing them not as a threat, but as a source of strength, to force these men, these architects of our new prosperity, to bury their capital in farmland is to demand that a sea captain abandon his ship to till a field. It is illogical, it is inefficient, and it will cripple the very trade that fills our treasury. And, I might add, pays for the legions that guard our frontiers, including the noble senator's ancestral lands. He is clever. He turns the argument from one of morality and tradition into one of pragmatism and security. He paints Philippus as a relic, a man who would risk the empire's financial health for the sake of nostalgia. He never mentions his patrons. He never speaks the name of Gaius Fulvius Cinna. He doesn't have to. The speech is a clear signal. The new money has found its voice, and it speaks the language of modern, practical politics, not the language of the past. The debate rages for hours, a proxy war fought with rhetoric. When the session ends, no vote has been taken. The law is stalled. That evening, you walk with Philippus through the forum. The place is crowded, but it is a different crowd from the one you knew in your youth. You see merchants from Alexandria haggling with bankers from Ephesus. You see Sabaean traders, their faces framed by dark beards, speaking in hushed tones near the Temple of Castor. The city has become the marketplace of the world. We have misjudged them, Decimus, Philippus says quietly, his eyes scanning the foreign faces. We thought they were merely merchants, but they are politicians. They have built their own state within the state, a network of patronage and debt that reaches into the heart of the Senate itself. We are fighting an enemy who refuses to meet us on the field of battle. He fights us in our counting houses, at our dinner parties, and in the whispers of our colleagues. You look up at the Capitoline Hill, the sacred heart of Rome, silhouetted against the twilight sky. For centuries, it has been the centre of the world, a fixed and eternal point. Now, you feel a profound sense of dislocation. As if the city's axis has begun to tilt. The foundation is no longer solid rock. It is something fluid, shifting, like the sands of the new province that is reshaping your world. The soul of Rome is being changed. One transaction, one silk robe, one curl of incense at a time. The whispers are growing louder, and they are speaking in a language you no longer fully understand. You arrive at Castra Rubra on a blistering afternoon when the red sandstone walls of the fortress seem to bleed heat back into the air. The journey from the coast was a lesson in misery. 150 miles of dust and glare that left your throat raw and your spirit chafed. But you are Marcus Aemilius Scaurus, a tribune of the senatorial class, and you have been raised to believe that a Roman mind can master any discomfort. A Roman order can tame any landscape. You have read the campaigns of Caesar in Gaul and Scipio in Africa. You have studied the unbreakable formations of the Macedonian phalanx and the Roman manipul. You have come to this remote corner of the world to command a legion, the mighty Sixth Ferrata, the ironclad legion, and to forge it into a perfect instrument of Roman will. The man who greets you is the legion's legate, Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo. He is a legend, a veteran of a dozen campaigns, but the man you meet is not the chiseled bust of a Roman general you expected. His face is a landscape of its own, tanned to the colour of old parchment and etched with 1,000 fine lines around the eyes. He wears not the polished cuirass and scarlet cloak of his rank, but a simple, sand-coloured linen tunic and a pair of worn leather breeches. "Welcome to the furnace, Tribune," he says, his voice a dry rasp. His handshake is brief and firm. "Leave your baggage. The first lesson is to learn what is essential and what is merely weight." As he leads you into the fortress, your carefully constructed image of a Roman legionary camp begins to disintegrate. The layout is familiar, the Principia at the centre. The barracks laid out in a neat grid, but the details are all wrong. The soldiers you see are not the barrel-chested, disciplined machines of the training fields near Rome. They are leaner, wirier, their skin baked to a dark bronze. They wear not the heavy, segmented armour of the Lorica segmentata, but lightweight coats of mail, or even simple boiled leather cuirasses. Their helmets are the standard Gallic model, but many have added a strip of cloth at the back to protect their necks from the sun, an unofficial but universal modification. And then there are the camels. They are everywhere, housed in long, shaded stables, where the legion's horses should be. The air is filled with their strange, musky scent and their guttural, complaining groans. You see legionaries, not Syrian auxiliaries, tending to the beasts with an easy, familiar expertise. "The Sixth is a camel legion now," Corbulo explains, noticing your expression. "A horse is a fine thing in a green field. In the desert, it is a thirsty and fragile luxury. A camel can go for a week without water. It can carry its own weight in supplies, and its feet don't sink in the sand. It is the true ship of the desert. Here, we value them more than siege engines." Your first formal review of a cohort is a shock. You order the centurion to have his men form the classic triplex aces, the triple battle line that has conquered the world. The men obey, but the movement is sluggish, awkward. The wide spacing required for the gladius feels absurd in this open landscape. Their large, rectangular shields, the scooter, look heavy and cumbersome. After the drill, you voice your concerns to Corbulo. "Legate, the men are lax. Their formation is sloppy. They have lost the edge of the heavy infantry." Corbulo gives you a look that is not unkind, but holds a deep, weary patience. "Tribune, the last time this legion fought in a triple battle line was at the siege of Marib, 20 years before you were born. Our enemies here are not Gallic hordes or Parthian cataphracts. Our enemy is the landscape itself, and the raiders who know how to use it. They do not form lines. They strike a supply caravan, take what they can, and vanish back into the sands. To fight them, we have had to unlearn everything we thought we knew. Determined to instill some proper Roman discipline, you use your authority to order a full kit route march for the cohort under your direct command. You insist on the full, heavy marching pack, the Lorica segmentata, the heavy scutum. It is a textbook exercise designed to build endurance and cohesion. It is also a catastrophe. After less than 5 miles under the midday sun, men begin to fall. The heat reflecting from the sand is a physical blow. The heavy armour becomes a personal oven. Your junior centurion, a veteran named Cassius who has served his entire career in this province, begs you to turn back. You refuse, your pride blinding you to the reality of the situation. The disaster is averted only when Corbulo and a detachment of the legion's dromedari ride out to meet you, not with recriminations, but with waterskins and shade cloths. They load the dozens of men suffering from heatstroke onto the camels and ferry them back to the fort. You are forced to ride back in shame, your classical education utterly defeated by a few hours of Arabian sun. You expect to be reprimanded, perhaps even sent back to Alexandria in disgrace. Instead, Corbulo summons you to his quarters that evening. He unrolls a map on his table. A Nabatean patrol was found slaughtered 2 days ago near the Well of 100 Thirsts, he says, his finger tracing a line deep into the desert. A silk caravan is due on that route in 1 week. It belongs to Gaius Fulvius Cinna, which means its security is a matter of state. I am leading a long-range patrol to scout the area. You will join me. You will wear what I wear, and you will carry what I carry. The patrol consists of 200 men, every one of them mounted on a camel. You are given a beast of your own, and a crash course in how to ride it. The rocking, swaying motion is nauseating at first, but you slowly grow accustomed to it. You wear a simple mail shirt and carry a small, round shield. Your gladius is still at your hip, but you are also issued a powerful composite bow and a quiver of arrows. For 5 days, you travel. The world becomes a simple, brutal equation of sun, sand, and water. You learn to navigate by the position of the stars, which burn with an impossible brightness in the clear night sky. You learn to read the subtle signs of the desert, the track of a sand viper, the direction of the prevailing wind. You see your legionaries in their true element. They are no longer lax or sloppy. They are hyper-aware, their senses honed to a razor's edge. They are masters of this environment. On the 6th day, the scouts report signs of a large raiding party. Corbulo leads you to a series of low, rocky mesas. He does not order the men to dismount and form a line. Instead, he gives a series of quiet commands. The legionaries spread out, taking up positions along the tops of the mesas, using the rocks for cover. The camels are hobbled and hidden in a small canyon. You have become a dispersed, almost invisible force of skirmishers. The raiders, perhaps 300 strong, ride into the valley below with an arrogant confidence. They are classic desert warriors, armed with spears and small, hide-covered shields. They have not seen you. The battle, when it comes, is nothing like the brutal, shield-to-shield slugging match of a European war. It is a clinical, long-range execution. Corbulo gives a signal, and a single, coordinated volley of arrows rains down on the raiders. The surprise is total. Men and horses fall. The raiders, confused and panicked, charge toward the base of the mesas. They are met not by a wall of shields, but by a second volley of arrows, and then by a shower of light javelins. Roman discipline asserts itself not in the holding of a line, but in the rate and accuracy of its fire. A few of the most determined raiders begin to climb the rocks. Only then do the legionaries draw their gladii. The fighting is brief and personal, but it happens on Roman terms, on high ground, against a disorganized and demoralized foe. Within 30 minutes, the raiding party is broken. The survivors flee into the desert, harried by a small, swift detachment of your own men who pursue them on the freshest camels. The Roman legion has not merely won, it has dominated the battlefield by refusing to fight in a conventional way. That evening, as you sit by a small campfire, Corbulo joins you. "Our armour is lighter, Tribune," he says, looking into the flames. "Our swords are used less often. Some in the Senate would say we are no longer a true Roman legion. But our eagle is still gold. Our discipline is still iron. And our reach is now 1,000 miles into a land no man before us could hold. We have changed. We have metamorphosed. That is why we are still Romans. That is why we still win." You look at the men around you, their faces illuminated by the firelight. They are not the soldiers you read about in books. They are something new, something forged in this crucible of sun and sand. They are Legio 6 Parthica Arabica, and for the first time since you arrived, you feel a profound sense of pride, not in the Rome you left behind, but in the Rome you are helping to create, here on the edge of the world. You arrive in Marib with a trunk full of books and a heart full of condescension. Your name is Titus Annius Milo, and you are a philosopher of the Stoa, trained in the cool, logical air of the academy in Athens. You have been summoned by the provincial governor, a man of some education, to establish a proper school of rhetoric and philosophy in this provincial capital. Your mission, as you see it, is to carry a flickering candle of Hellenic reason into a dark and superstitious land. You have come to teach, not to learn. Your first sight of the city confirms all your prejudices. You see the catastrophic failure of the Great Dam, a monument to a hubris even greater than Rome's. Its ruins a stark reminder of the ultimate victory of nature over the ambitions of men. The city itself, huddled within its ancient walls, seems to be shrinking, the surrounding desert encroaching on the once fertile fields. It is a city of dust and ghosts, a fitting capital for a province of savages and spice-grubbing merchants. Your destination, however, is not a ghost. It is a shock, a profound and unsettling disruption of your expectations. Set against the crumbling mud brick of the old city is a new complex of buildings, a sprawling edifice of pristine, rose-red sandstone and imported white marble. Its architecture is a dizzying, yet harmonious. You see the clean, solid lines of Roman arches supporting a vast portico, but the columns are carved not with familiar Corinthian acanthus leaves, but with the stylized, geometric patterns of Nabatean art. The central courtyard is a perfect Greek peristyle, but instead of a simple pool, a series of narrow, stone-lined water channels. The local fallage system crisscross the space, gurgling with recycled water, creating a cool, pleasant microclimate. This is the great library of Marib, paid for in its entirety by the personal fortune of the Palmyrene magnate Gaius Fulvius Cinna. It is not a candle in the dark, it is a bonfire. The man who greets you is the chief librarian, a polymath from Alexandria named Ctesibius. He is a Greek, which gives you some comfort, but his eyes hold a restless, omnivorous curiosity that you find unsettling. One wing is reassuringly familiar. It houses the classics of your world, thousands upon thousands of papyrus scrolls in Greek and Latin, neatly racked in their wooden pigeonholes. You see the complete works of Plato, of Aristotle, of your own master Zeno. But in the next hall, you stop dead. The materials are different. There are stacks of delicate, wafer-thin palm leaf manuscripts, bound between wooden boards. Their strange, curling scripts a testament to a distant, unknown civilization. There are heavy bronze plaques, covered in the angular, ancient script of the Sabaeans, salvaged from the ruined temples. There are even a few precious sheets of parchment from Pergamum, detailing the arcane religious rites of the Parthians. Our Indian collection is the fastest growing, Ctesibius says with pride, gesturing to the palm leaves. The ships of the Eudaemon line bring us not only pepper and silk, but knowledge. We have treatises on mathematics that contain concepts our own Archimedes never dreamed of, medical texts that map the body's hidden energies, and philosophical works. Ah, the philosophies. He leads you to a large reading room. It is filled with scholars, but they are not the sober, toga-clad Romans you expected. A group in the corner is huddled around a large table, arguing intently. You see a Roman surveyor, a Sabaean astronomer with a magnificent white beard, and a small, dark-skinned man in a saffron robe. On the table is a Roman star chart, but the Sabaean is correcting it, pointing to the ceiling where a vast, painted celestial map depicts constellations you have never seen. The Indian, meanwhile, is scrawling complex equations onto a wax tablet using a strange symbol, a circle with a dot in it to represent the concept of nothingness, an idea you find both absurd and terrifying. They are not merely comparing notes, they are creating a new cosmology, a synthesis of Roman observation, Arabian navigation, and Indian mathematics. You begin your lectures the following week in a state of profound unease. You choose a foundational text, Cleanthe's Hymn to Zeus, a perfect expression of the Stoic concept of the universal, rational order, the Logos. You speak of the divine fire that animates all things, of the virtue of living in accordance with this rational nature. Your students are attentive, a mixture of the sons of Roman administrators, wealthy local merchants, and a few brilliant young men from the nomadic tribes, their tuition paid for by the library's patrons. At the end of the lecture, a young Nabatean raises his hand. "Master," he says, his Latin precise, "the divine fire you speak of, the Logos, how does it differ from the vital energy our fathers say resides in the sacred stones, the power of Dushara that gives life to the desert?" Before you can formulate a dismissive answer about pagan superstition, another student, the son of a Roman centurion from the Legion of Sol Invictus, speaks up. And is not this Logos simply another name for the unconquered sun, the source of all light and life, whose presence is the ultimate reality of this land? You are caught in a crossfire of syncretism. They are not rejecting your philosophy. They are actively, intelligently, trying to merge it with their own. They are treating your Stoic Logos as just one more piece of a much larger puzzle. For the first time in your life as a teacher, you are at a loss for words. The ultimate humiliation comes a month later. Ctesibius, ever the impresario, arranges a public debate between you and a visiting scholar from the Kushan Empire, a Buddhist monk named Nagasena. The topic is the nature of the self. The library's central courtyard is packed. You deliver a masterful oration on the Stoic conception of the soul, the rational part of the individual that is a spark of the universal Logos. You speak of the importance of the self, of the individual's duty to maintain his moral integrity in the face of external events. Your arguments are logical, built upon the foundations of 500 years of Greek thought. You expect polite, if uncomprehending, applause. Then Nagasena speaks. He is a small, unassuming man with a serene smile. He speaks through an interpreter, but his presence is mesmerizing. He does not argue. He tells a story, a parable about a chariot. He leads the audience to the conclusion that the chariot is just a convenient name for a collection of parts, a temporary assembly that has no permanent, independent existence. So it is with the self, he concludes, his voice gentle. What you call the self is but a fleeting collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. It has no core, no permanent essence. The source of all suffering is the attachment to this illusion. True peace comes not from perfecting the self, but from realizing it does not exist. The silence in the courtyard is absolute. You try to rebut him, to attack his logic. You call his doctrine a nihilistic fantasy. But your arguments, which would have been devastating in Athens, feel brittle and aggressive here. He simply smiles and asks you a question. If your rational self is a spark of a universal fire, then is the spark separate from the flame, or is the separateness itself the illusion? You have no answer. He has used your own philosophy against you, turning it inside out. In that moment, you realize the ground has shifted beneath your feet. You came here to teach, but you have been profoundly schooled. The intellectual certainty that has been the bedrock of your entire life has been fractured. You do not leave Marib. Your pride is shattered, but your philosopher's curiosity is ignited. You begin to spend your days not in the lecture hall, but in the reading rooms, with Ctesibius as your guide. You study the palm leaf manuscripts. You learn the basics of the Indian mathematical system. You debate late into the night with the Sabaean astronomers. Years later, you are no longer Titus Annius Milo, the pure Stoic from Athens. You have become something new. You are the head of the Marib School of Philosophy, and the system you teach is a synthesis. You teach your students the logic and ethics of the Greeks, but you use the parables of the Buddhists to illustrate the nature of the mind. You discuss the Stoic concept of a universal providence, but you relate it to the Indian understanding of karma. You have not abandoned reason, but you have yoked it to a deeper, more mystical understanding of the cosmos, one that acknowledges the limits of logic and the power of inner experience. The Great Library of Marib, once a symbol of your humiliation, has become your life's work. It is the intellectual engine of the metamorphosis, a place where the mind of the empire is being unmade and remade, where the philosophies of the East and West are not merely colliding, but are fusing into a new and powerful alloy, one that will reshape the soul of Rome for centuries to come. The journey from Antioch felt like a regression, a slow descent from the familiar world into a land of primordial emptiness. The road, a well-maintained Roman military highway, eventually gave way to a packed earth track and finally dissolved into a series of markers in the sand, a route legible only to your Palmyrene guides. You are Claudius Pulcher, a junior envoy from the office of the urban prefect, sent on what was publicly described as a fact-finding mission, and privately understood to be an act of espionage. Your mission is to assess the city of Palmyra, this desert metropolis that has grown from a simple caravan stop into a power so vast and so wealthy that its name is spoken with a mixture of awe and fear in the corridors of the Palatine Hill. For days, you have seen nothing but the endless, featureless expanse of the Syrian desert. Then, as the sun begins its late afternoon slant, your guide points to the horizon. At first, you see nothing. Then, you perceive it, a shimmering line of impossible green, a vast forest of date palms rising from the barren earth, and above the trees, the glint of gold on marble. As you draw closer, the city resolves itself from the heat haze, and the sight is so stunning, so utterly improbable, that it stops the breath in your throat. It is a vision. You enter the city through a monumental triple archway, a structure that rivals the triumphal arches of Rome in its scale and grandeur. Yet, it is carved with a profusion of unfamiliar motifs, grapevines and acanthus leaves intertwined with camels and zodiacal signs. Beyond the arch stretches the great colonnade, a stone river of a street, over a kilometre long and lined on both sides with hundreds of colossal Corinthian columns. But these are not the clean, uniform columns of a Roman forum. Halfway up each one is a projecting bracket, and on each bracket stands a bronze statue. You see statues of Roman senators in togas, of Parthian nobles in trousers and tunics, of bearded desert sheikhs in flowing robes, and of wealthy merchants whose names are inscribed in both Latin and Palmyrene Aramaic. It is a gallery of the city's patrons and power brokers, a visual declaration that here, all powers, all cultures, are welcome, as long as they bring commerce with them. The city is a symphony of controlled chaos. The main street is a river of humanity. You see Roman soldiers from the local garrison, their armour gleaming, walking beside Kushan diplomats from the south. Saffron-robed monks from the school at Marib debate philosophy with Greek rhetoricians. You hear a dozen languages being spoken, yet the lingua franca is not Latin, but Aramaic and Greek. The air smells of everything at once: roasting lamb, exotic spices, camel dung, and the clean, sharp scent of worked stone from the countless construction sites. The city is not just alive. It is booming, growing before your very eyes. Your guide leads you to a guest house funded by the Merchants' Guild. It is more luxurious than any villa you have stayed in. Cool water flows through channels in the floor. The rooms are hung with Parthian silks, and the furniture is inlaid with Indian ivory. You realize with a jolt that this city, a mere dot in the desert on the maps in Rome, has a higher standard of living than the capital itself. Here, wealth is not just a concept. It is the very substance of daily life. The next day, you explore the markets, and you begin to understand the source of this incredible prosperity. Palmyra is not a producer of wealth. It is the world's ultimate middleman. It is a funnel, a nexus point through which the riches of the East are channeled, taxed, and distributed to the West. In one stall, you see translucent glass bottles from the workshops of Sidon being sold to a merchant who will transport them to India. In another, a Chinese trader, his face a mask of impassive patience, presides over a mountain of silk bales, their value equal to the annual budget of a Roman legion. You see things you had only ever read about. pepper from the Malabar coast, pearls from the Gulf, rhinoceros horns from Africa, amber from the distant Baltic, all of it passing through this desert clearinghouse. Palmyra's location, once a strategic liability, has become its greatest asset, the single point where all the great trade routes from Arabia, Felix, from the Persian Gulf, from the Silk Road, converge. But it is not just goods that are traded here. It is power. That afternoon, you are granted an audience with the man you were sent to observe, Gaius Fulvius Cinna. He does not receive you in a Roman-style basilica or praetorium. His headquarters is in the great courtyard of the Temple of Bel, a massive religious complex dedicated to a syncretic fusion of the Babylonian chief god, the Greek Zeus, and the Roman Jupiter. Here, religion and commerce are inseparable. Cinna himself is older now than when he first launched his economic war against the Senate. His hair is streaked with silver, but his eyes are as sharp and cold as ever. He is dressed not in a toga, but in a fine purple-dyed silk tunic, the attire of an Eastern king. He sits on a carved chair, surrounded not by lictors, but by a bodyguard of fierce-looking Palmyrene archers. He greets you with perfect, formal courtesy. But there is no mistaking the power dynamic. You are the petitioner here. You have come to his court. Rome does us a great honour, he says, his voice smooth. We were under the impression that the Senate has more pressing matters to attend to than the price of pepper in a desert town. The polite words carry a clear, mocking subtext. You deliver your official message, a carefully worded request from the Senate for a more equitable and predictable flow of goods to the capital. You speak of the importance of the annona, the public grain supply, and how Palmyrene control over the eastern trade routes affects the stability of the empire. Cinna listens patiently. When you are finished, he gestures to an aide, who unrolls a map. It is a map of the known world, but its centre is not Rome. Its centre is Palmyra. Envoy Pulcher, he begins, rising and walking to the map. You speak of stability. Let me show you what we have done for the stability of the empire. Here, he points to a region on the Parthian frontier. The Senite tribe was raiding our caravans. The governor of Syria sent a request to Rome for another legion. He will receive his answer in 6 months. We could not wait. I sent 300 of my own men, the Palmyrene horse, and negotiated a treaty with the local Parthian satrap. We did not consult Rome. We did not need to. The raids stopped. The trade flows. Is this not stability? He moves his finger south. Here, a dispute between two powerful Sabaean clans threatened to close the incense road. The Roman procurator in Marib was preparing for a civil war that would have disrupted the frankincense supply for years. My agents, using the influence that my family has built over generations, mediated a peace. We sealed it with a marriage alliance and a gift of 100 Cappadocian horses. You are stunned into silence. He is openly admitting to conducting his own foreign and military policy. He is running a parallel government, a shadow empire whose primary concern is not territorial integrity, but the security of its commercial network. You realize that to him, the Roman legions and governors are not the ultimate authority. They are merely one more factor to be managed, a large, clumsy, and often inefficient piece on the geopolitical chessboard. We are loyal servants of the emperor, Cinna concludes, his eyes locking onto yours. We ask for nothing in return, except to be allowed to conduct our business without the interference of senators who still believe the world ends at the Euphrates. You may tell your masters in Rome that Palmyra is the eastern wall of the empire. It is a wall built not of stone, but of gold and steel, and it is stronger than they can possibly imagine. That night, you write your report. You dip your stylus and begin to write the truth. A truth you know the Senate does not want to hear. Palmyra is not a Roman city, you write. It is not even truly part of the province of Syria. It is a new thing, a commercial empire that wears a Roman mask as a matter of convenience. Its leaders are not our subjects. They are our partners, and perhaps soon, our masters. They do not seek to conquer Rome with armies. They seek to buy it, to make it so dependent on the wealth they control that it can no longer command. The centre of the world is no longer on the banks of the Tiber. I believe it is here, in this glittering, impossible city of sand and gold. The atmosphere in the Senate is not one of debate, but of controlled panic. The wax tablet containing the report from the envoy, Claudius Pulcher, has been passed from hand to hand among the senior senators of the Boni. The traditionalist faction, with each reading, the faces grow grimmer, the whispers more urgent. The document is an incendiary device, thrown into the heart of their world. It confirms their deepest fears in stark, unsparing detail. Palmyra is not a subject city, but a rival power. The Eastern Equites are not merely merchants, they are the architects of a shadow state. You, Lucius Marcius Philippus, are no longer just a respected elder statesman. You stand before the assembled Senate, the weight of your ancestors, of centuries of Roman tradition, settling upon your shoulders. Your voice, though aged, does not tremble. It is cold, hard, and resonant with absolute conviction. This is not a matter of trade policy, you begin, holding up a copy of the report. It is a matter of sovereignty. Do we rule this empire? Or do the money changers in a desert oasis? Do the laws of Rome, passed in this sacred house, govern our provinces? Or do the private armies of men like Gaius Fulvius Cinna? You pause, letting the questions hang in the tense air of the Curia. You look at the faces of your colleagues. You see fear, yes, but you also see the flicker of outraged pride, the ancient Roman arrogance that has been slumbering, drugged by the sweet perfumes of Eastern wealth. This is the emotion you must harness. For a generation, you continue. We have watched this creeping corruption. We have seen our sons adopt the effeminate dress of the East, our wives covet their decadent luxuries, our very language polluted by their foreign babble. We told ourselves it was the price of prosperity. We were wrong. It is the price of our submission. While we debated in this chamber, they were building an empire of gold, an empire of debt, an empire of influence that has now wrapped its tentacles around the very institutions of our state. You point toward the benches where the newer senators sit, the men like Cornelius Lentulus, who owe their careers and their fortunes to the patronage of the Eastern Equites. They have their agents even here, in this house, men who speak with Roman tongues but serve foreign masters. They have bought our politicians, they have suborned our legions with their private supply contracts, and now they dare to conduct their own wars, their own diplomacy, as if the Senate of Rome were nothing more than a provincial town council. Your speech is a declaration of war. You are deliberately drawing a line in the sand, forcing every man in the room to choose a side. There can be no more compromise, no more accommodation. The survival of the Roman ideal is at stake. You propose a radical, almost suicidal course of action. Not a law which can be debated, delayed, and subverted by bribery. You call for a senatus consultum ultimum, the final decree of the Senate, a state of emergency that gives the consuls near dictatorial power to preserve the Republic. And the first act under this decree will be the issuance of an ultimatum to the city of Palmyra. The terms are brutal and designed to be non-negotiable. First, the immediate and permanent disbandment of all private military forces, including the Palmyrene horse. Second, the surrender of Gaius Fulvius Cinna and the 10 leading members of the Merchants' Guild to Rome to stand trial for treason. Third, the imposition of a Roman governor-general with 3 legions under his direct command to rule the city and oversee all trade. The chamber erupts. The faction loyal to the Equites, led by Lentulus, leaps to its feet, shouting protests. They call you a warmonger, a madman who would plunge the empire into civil war for the sake of antiquated prejudice. Lentulus delivers a slick, pragmatic rebuttal. He speaks of economic collapse, of the legions in the east going unpaid and unfed without the Equites' logistical support. The esteemed Senator Philippus would have us cut off our own arm to spite a hangnail, he cries. He romanticizes a past of virtuous poverty while ignoring the realities of our global empire. Palmyra is not our enemy. It is our engine of prosperity. The debate is no longer about policy. It is a raw, visceral clash of two irreconcilable worldviews. One side sees a republic of laws, traditions, and martial virtue. The other sees a pragmatic, commercial enterprise. It is the Roman farmer versus the cosmopolitan merchant, the sword versus the ledger. For 3 days, the Senate is paralyzed. The city of Rome holds its breath. The artificial shortages created by Cinna have already made the populace restless. Now, rumors of civil war fly through the forum. The price of grain begins to spike as speculators hoard supplies. You see the genius of your enemy's strategy. They have made the empire so dependent on their system that the very act of trying to remove the cancer threatens to kill the patient. But you have one final card to play. You have spent your considerable family fortune and called in every favor built over a lifetime of public service to ensure the loyalty of one man, the prefect of the Praetorian Guard. He is an old-school soldier, a man who despises the soft-perfumed politicians of the new school. On the evening of the 3rd day, you meet him in secret. The Senate is broken, you tell him. It has lost the will to rule. The Republic is dying, strangled by foreign gold. The prefect, a man of few words, nods grimly. What must be done? Tomorrow I will call for the vote. You say, I need your men to secure the forum, not to interfere, merely to be present, a visible reminder that the ultimate power in this city still rests with the sword, not the coin. The next morning, the city awakens to a changed reality. 10 cohorts of the Praetorian Guard, in full battle armor, their purple-plumed helmets gleaming in the sun, have taken up positions around the Curia and throughout the forum. They are silent, disciplined, and utterly intimidating. It is not a coup. It is a statement. The senators arrive for the session, their faces pale. The usual crowds of lobbyists and hangers-on are gone, replaced by silent, armored sentinels. The message is brutally clear. The games are over. You rise to speak, your voice calm. You do not repeat your arguments. You simply call for the vote on the Senatus Consultum Ultimum. One by one, the senators are polled. The supporters of the Equites, their faces a mixture of fear and fury, see that the tide has turned. The waverers, the men who feared economic disruption, now fear the Praetorians more. The vote is not even close. The decree passes by a 3-1 margin. The ultimatum is dispatched to Palmyra by the fastest ship in the fleet. You have won. You have forced the confrontation you believe is necessary to save the Republic. In the stunned silence that follows the vote, you feel a moment of grim triumph. You have stared into the abyss of the future. A future of a hybridized, commercialized, unrecognizable Rome. And you have forced it to blink. But as you walk out of the Curia, past the impassive faces of the Praetorians, a cold dread begins to seep into your heart. You see Cornelius Lentulus across the forum. They are behaving like men who have just moved to the next phase of their plan. You have declared war on the Eastern Equites. You have staked everything on the belief that a show of traditional Roman military force can bring them to heel. You have drawn your gladius, the symbol of Roman power. You do not yet realize that your enemy does not fight with swords. You have started a war, but it will be a war fought on their terms, in a way you cannot yet comprehend. The schism is no longer a matter of debate. It is a chasm that has opened in the heart of the empire, and you have just pushed Rome into it. In the grand, open-air temple of Sol Invictus at Castra Odorata, a new kind of council of war is taking place. The attendees are not just the legates and tribunes of the Eastern legions. Their faces hardened by years of desert sun. Seated among them, treated as equals, are the high priests of the cult from across the eastern provinces, and, most significantly, a delegation of the wealthiest eastern Equites, led by a calm, impeccably dressed Palmyrene named Zabdas, a man known to be Gaius Fulvius, Cinna's most trusted lieutenant. The air, usually filled with the clean scent of frankincense, is thick with tension and the smell of dust from the horses and camels of the newly arrived messengers. You are Legate Tiberius Claudius Balbus, the man who first formalized the syncretic cult of the Reborn Sunday. You are now the de facto spiritual leader of the Eastern military. Your authority derived not from the Senate, but from the genuine, fervent faith of your soldiers. The news of the Senate's ultimatum, delivered to you by a frantic courier from Antioch, has forced you into an impossible position. The Senate, the traditional source of your authority, has declared war on the very men who feed your legions, finance your temples, and maintain the stability of your provinces. Zabdas of Palmyra speaks first. He does not rage or panic. His voice is the cool, precise instrument of a merchant, stating the terms of a deal. The Senate's decree is an act of economic suicide, he says, addressing the assembled officers. They demand we dismantle the networks that supply you. They demand we surrender the men who pay you. They do this in the name of a tradition that no longer reflects the reality of this empire. A grizzled legate from the legion in Bostra slams his fist on the table. They are the Senate of Rome. We are sworn to obey their decrees. To do otherwise is treason. A high priest from the temple in Petra, a man with the burning eyes of a zealot, rises to his feet. The Senate of Rome is a nest of idolaters and corrupt traditionalists who choke on the smoke of their meaningless sacrifices. They follow the old gods who have abandoned them to their petty squabbles. We follow the living God, the unconquered Son, who gives us victory and prosperity. Where does our true allegiance lie? To a distant, dying institution. The room is now a tinderbox of conflicting loyalties. Military discipline versus economic reality, religious fervor versus constitutional law. You, Balbus, realize that you are the only one who can bridge these divides, who can forge these disparate elements into a unified force. You have spent years building a faith that unites the soldier, the merchant, and the priest under the banner of a single, syncretic God. Now, that faith is being put to the ultimate test. You rise, and a hush falls over the council. All eyes are on you. We are all Romans, you begin, your voice resonating with the authority you have earned. But what does it mean to be Roman? Is it to cling to the customs of a small city-state on the Tiber, to a past that can never be recovered? Or is it to embrace the destiny of a world empire? To adapt, to grow, to become something greater? You walk to the center of the temple, standing before the great black altar that represents the heart of your faith. For a generation, we in the East have been forging this greater Rome. Our merchants have built arteries of wealth that are the envy of the world. Our soldiers have mastered new ways of war that have pacified a continent. And our faith has given us a God who is not a relic in a marble temple, but a living presence in the world we inhabit. We have built a new Romanitas, a Romanitas Orientalis, based on pragmatism, prosperity, and a true, living faith. You turn to face them, your expression hardening. And now, a faction of old men in Rome, men who fear the future, men who resent our success, seek to destroy everything we have built. They send us an ultimatum. They demand we become as they are, impoverished, backward-looking, and irrelevant. They demand we betray our partners, abandon our God, and bow to their tyranny. I say to you, we will not bow. The words hang in the air. An open declaration of rebellion. But you are not a crude usurper. You know you cannot simply march on Rome. You must give your rebellion a philosophical and religious foundation, a legitimacy that transcends mere politics. You must create a new ideology. The Senate has declared us traitors, you proclaim. But the truth is that they are the ones who are traitors to the destiny of Rome. They are the schismatics, clinging to a dead faith. We are the true Romans, for we are the ones building the future. They have their Jupiter, a god of stone. We have the unconquered Sunday. But our sun is not the god of a single people. It is the god of all mankind, a power that shines on the Roman, the Greek, the the Palmyrene, the Indian, with equal grace. It is in this moment that the doctrine is born, forged in the heat of political necessity and religious inspiration. They speak of a single empire, ruled from a single city, but the cosmos shows us a different model. Our astronomers in Marib, studying the wisdom of the Chaldeans and the Indians, have shown that the universe has two great lights: the sun, which rules the day, and the moon, which rules the night. They are not enemies. They are partners in the great cosmic order. A murmur of understanding spreads through the room. The priests and soldiers, steeped in the dualistic philosophies that have been seeping in from the East, grasp the metaphor immediately. Let there then be two Romes. You declare, your voice ringing with the force of prophecy. Let there be a Rome of the West, the Rome of the night, the keeper of the old ways, the guardian of the ancestral soil. And let there be a Rome of the East, the Rome of the day, the builder of the future, the master of the world's commerce. Let there be an empire of marble, and an empire of myrrh, and over it all, let there be the doctrine of the twin suns, a Roman sun of order and an Eastern sun of spirit, two aspects of a single, universal divine power. It is a stroke of theological and political genius. You are not declaring independence. You are not seeking to destroy Rome. You are redefining it. You are proposing a radical reordering of the empire, a formal division based on a divine mandate. You are offering a way for your soldiers to rebel without feeling like traitors, a way for the merchants to secure their interests under a cloak of religious legitimacy. You are transforming a political schism into a holy war. The council rises to its feet, a roar of acclamation echoing through the temple. The legates, their doubts washed away by this powerful new vision, pledge their legions to the cause. Zabdas and the Equites pledge the full, inexhaustible financial resources of Palmyra. The high priests declare that all who oppose this new doctrine are heretics, enemies of the true God. That night, under your direction, the priests and scribes work feverishly, codifying the new faith. They create a formal theology, the Doctrina Gemina Solis, the doctrine of the twin suns. It is a masterpiece of syncretism. It incorporates the Stoic concept of the Logos, now defined as the rational order of the Western Sunday. It includes the mystical Eastern idea of enlightenment, the inner spiritual journey toward the Eastern Sunday. It gives a divine sanction to the commercial activities of the Equites, defining the flow of trade as the lifeblood that circulates between the two halves of the cosmic body. It even reinterprets the history of the province, casting Aelius Gallus not as a mere conqueror, but as the forerunner, the man who first opened the gate between the West and the East. Within a week, this new doctrine, printed on hundreds of sheets of papyrus, is being distributed to every legion, every city, every temple in the East. It is a new gospel, a declaration of spiritual and political independence that provides a powerful, unifying ideology for the coming conflict. The Senatorial Schism has triggered the birth of a new religion, a new political theory, a new civilization. The metamorphosis is now complete and has been given a holy name. The city of Rome is starving. It is a slow, quiet, and deeply insidious process, unlike the sharp, clean violence of a siege. It begins as a rumour in the Subura, a whisper of grain ships from Alexandria being delayed by unfavourable winds. Then the price of bread in the public bakeries doubles, then triples. The great warehouses at Ostia, usually overflowing with Egyptian wheat, are hollow and echoing. The Annona, the sacred grain dole that keeps the million-headed beast of the Roman mob placid, is cut in half, then suspended entirely. The river of gold that once flowed from the eastern provinces, the taxes from Syria, the revenues from the spice trade has simply vanished, as if a great dam has been built somewhere beyond the horizon. You, Decimus Junius Silanus, walk through a city that is becoming unrecognizable. The vibrant, chaotic energy of the Forum has been replaced by a sullen, simmering anger. Gaunt-faced men gather in silent, resentful crowds. The wealthy, who once paraded their eastern silks, now stay barricaded in their villas. their private food stores making them targets for the increasingly desperate poor. The Senate, under the emergency powers of the Senatus Consultum Ultimum. Your faction, the traditionalists led by the indomitable Lucius Marcius Philippus, is in absolute control of the state's legal apparatus. But you are beginning to understand the terrifying truth. You are the captains of a ship that has run out of fuel. Philippus is a man of iron will, a figure carved from the stone of the old republic. He insists in the tense, daily meetings of the War Council. When we march east and burn that den of traitors in Palmyra to the ground, the grain will flow again. He speaks of legions, of marching, of burning. He is a Roman, and these are the Roman solutions to every problem. But you see the flaw in his magnificent, anachronistic logic. The legions in Illyria need to be paid. They need to be fed. The state treasury is empty. The tax farmers report that there is simply no money to collect. The commercial empire of the East has not fired a single arrow, but it has laid siege to the capital more effectively than any army in history. The breaking point, when it comes, is not a riot in the streets, but a quiet, chilling act of betrayal in the Praetorian camp. The Praetorian Guard, the kingmakers of Rome, have not been paid in 2 months. Their loyalty to Philippus and the Senate, purchased with a show of force and a promise of traditionalist virtue, is a luxury their empty stomachs can no longer afford. One morning, the prefect of the guard, the same man who secured the forum for you, the man you believed was the bedrock of your new order, requests an audience with the consuls and the war council. He enters the curia not as a servant of the state, but as a conqueror. He is flanked by 2 centurions, their hands resting on the pommels of their swords. His face is an impassive mask. The Senate can no longer guarantee the stability of the city or the welfare of its soldiers, the prefect announces, his voice flat and devoid of deference. My men have families to feed. Their loyalty is to the Roman state, and the state is failing in its most basic duty. Philippus rises, his face white with fury. This is extortion. This is treason. No, Senator, the prefect replies, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet tone. This is reality. Your war with the East is a private obsession that is destroying Rome. It must end. There are parties, wiser parties, who have made us a better offer, one that guarantees the grain will flow and my men will be paid. The sheer, stunning audacity of the betrayal leaves you speechless. The armed forces of the state have been bought, openly and shamelessly, by the very enemy you sought to destroy. The Eastern Equites did not need to defeat your legions on the battlefield. They simply purchased the legion that mattered most. At that moment, the great bronze doors of the curia swing open. A delegation enters. At its head is a man you have never seen before, but whose presence radiates an almost divine self-assurance. He is tall and slender in the prime of his life, with the sharp, intelligent features of a Palmyrene aristocrat. He is clean-shaven in the Roman style, but his dark, piercing eyes hold an Eastern depth. He is dressed in a simple, unadorned white toga, but he wears it with the casual authority of a man born to rule. Behind him are a dozen agents of the Eastern Equites, their faces familiar from the counting houses and the back rooms of the city. One of them, a man you recognize as Cinna's chief agent in Rome, steps forward. "Honourable senators," he says, his voice dripping with a mock courtesy that is more insulting than any threat. "The crisis is over. We present to you the solution. This is Lucius Septimius Odenat, a Roman citizen of Palmyra, a respected scholar from the great library of Marib, and a high priest of the divine cult of Sol Invictus." Philippus lets out a strangled laugh of disbelief. "You bring a provincial priest to lecture us? The city is starving, and you bring us a Syrian mystic?" The agent's smile is thin and cold. "We bring you more than a priest, Senator. The Praetorian Guard, with the full support of the Eastern legions and the provincial assemblies of Syria, Arabia, and Egyptus. The silence that falls is not a silence of reverence, but of a world ending. The words are unthinkable, a blasphemy against 1,000 years of history. An emperor, a Syrian emperor, a provincial, a spice merchant's priest, proclaimed emperor in the heart of Rome by a bought and paid for Praetorian Guard. It is the ultimate victory of the East, a complete and total inversion of the natural order of the world. Eudaemon steps forward. He does not speak like a conqueror. His voice is the calm, measured tone of a philosopher, the voice of a man from the new school at Marib. "I have not come to destroy Rome," he says, his Latin perfect, with only the faintest trace of an Eastern accent. "I have come to fulfill it. The age of Rome as a city is over. The age of Rome as an idea, a universal civilization, is beginning. The doctrine of the twin suns teaches us that there must be balance. For too long, the West has ruled through brute force, while the East has been the silent, unacknowledged source of its prosperity. That imbalance is now corrected." He looks directly at Philippus, his expression one of almost clinical pity. "You fought for the past, Senator, a noble but impossible cause. We serve the future, a future where the wisdom of the East is joined with the order of the West, where the merchant and the soldier, the priest and the politician work in harmony under the light of a single, unifying divine truth." The Praetorian centurions step forward and take Philippus by the arms. He does not resist. He seems to have aged 50 years in a single hour. He looks around the Senate, at the terrified faces of his colleagues, at the confident, smiling faces of the Eastern agents, at the serene, otherworldly face of the new emperor. He has been utterly and comprehensively outmaneuvered. He fought a war of swords and laws, while his enemy fought a war of gold and ideas. That afternoon, the grain ships from Alexandria, which had been waiting at anchor just out of sight of Ostia, arrive in the harbour. Carts laden with wheat, paid for with Palmyrene gold, rumble through the streets of Rome. The bakeries reopen. Free wine is distributed, a gift from the new emperor. The mood of the city turns on a dime, from sullen despair to delirious celebration. They hail Eudaemon as a saviour, a god who has brought them bread. They do not care that he is a Syrian. They care that he has fed them. You watch the scene from the window of your villa, the sounds of celebration grating on your soul. Philippus is dead, having taken his own life in his cell, a final, stoic act of defiance. You are alive, a relic, a ghost, in a city that is no longer yours. The schism has been resolved not by civil war, but by a hostile takeover. The metamorphosis is complete. The body of the empire is still Roman, but its head, its heart, and its soul now belong to the East. An emperor from Palmyra sits on the throne of Augustus. A high priest of a syncretic desert cult is now the Pontifex Maximus. The Roman Empire has not fallen. It has been transformed, irrevocably, from within. You are standing on the northern bank of the river Rhine, on the parapet of a watchtower at Mogontiacum, the largest Roman fortress in Germania Superior. A bone-deep, damp cold seeps through the thick wool of your cloak and the leather of your boots. Below you, the river is a sluggish, grey serpent, its waters heavy with the silt of a continent. On the far bank, stretching to a horizon lost in mist, is the great North Forest. Your name is Flavius Stilicho, though your family name is a proud mockery here, as you share no blood with the famous Vandal general of another timeline. You are the Dux, the commander of the entire Rhine frontier. It is a posting that was once the most prestigious and vital in the entire empire, the bulwark against the barbarian hordes, the forge of emperors. A messenger arrives, his horse lathered in sweat despite the cold. He brings the latest dispatches from the capital. You take the scrolls to your quarters. A Spartan, functional room, heated by a single, smoky brazier. The news is, as always, infuriatingly distant. The Emperor Eudaemon has issued a new series of edicts. The first allocates a massive sum, the equivalent of your entire annual budget for the next 5 years, to the expansion of the Classis Orientalis, the Eastern Fleet. New, larger dromons are to be constructed for a planned expedition to the ports of the Gangetic Plain. The second edict funds the establishment of 3 new philosophical academies in the east, in Marib, in Petra, and in Alexandria, dedicated to the study and propagation of the harmonious principles of the twin sons doctrine. The third edict concerns you directly. Your request for 2 new legions to reinforce the crumbling defences on the lower Rhine has been denied. The Emperor, the dispatch explains with maddeningly polite logic, has determined that the greater long-term threat to imperial stability lies in potential disruptions to the sea trade with the Ceres. The border with the Germanic tribes is, for the moment, considered stable. You throw the scroll onto the table with a curse. Stable? Last week, a war band of Franks crossed the river on the ice, sacked a provincial town, and vanished back into the forests before your depleted cavalry could even respond. Your legionaries are stretched thin, holding a line that is hundreds of miles long with a force designed to hold half that. Their equipment is old, their pay is often late, and their morale is abysmal. They look at the new coins, stamped on one side with the familiar profile of a Roman emperor, but on the other with the strange, radiant symbol of the Eastern Sun, and they feel like foreigners in their own army. Your second in command, a bluff, hard-bitten centurion named Valerius, enters the room. He sees the dispatch and the look on your face. "More wisdom from the sun-worshippers, sir?" he asks, his voice thick with sarcasm. "They are sending gold to build ships to sail to the edge of the world," you say. He calls himself Emperor of Rome, but he has never even seen the Rhine. His idea of a barbarian is a Parthian who speaks bad Greek. Valerius nods, his expression grim. "The men feel it too, sir. They hear the stories. The legions in the east are showered with donatives. They serve in rich cities, guarding caravans of silk. We are left here to freeze in the mud." This is the new reality of the empire. The strategic map, the very definition of what is important, has been redrawn. For centuries, the empire had 2 primary fronts: the Rhine, Danube frontier against the Germans, and the Euphrates frontier against the Parthians. Now, a third front has been added, one that has superseded all others in the imperial mind: the maritime frontier of the Indian Ocean. The empire's resources, its money, its attention, its best and brightest men are all flowing east. They are masters of a new kind of warfare, a mobile, long-range doctrine perfectly suited to their environment. Your own men, the heavy infantry of the European theatre, are seen as relics, slow, cumbersome, and expensive. You have tried to explain to the imperial bureaucracy that a camel is of no use in a muddy forest, that a composite bow is worthless in a freezing rain. They do not listen. They are obsessed with the East. The cultural divide is even more profound than the strategic one. Your men still make their offerings to Jupiter and Mars, to the local spirits of the river and the forest. They see the twin sons doctrine as a foreign heresy, a bizarre desert faith that has somehow bewitched the leaders of the empire. They are scornful of the Eastern soldiers, whom they call spice boys and perfumed guards, men who have grown soft in the luxurious cities of the south. But you know the truth is more complex. You have seen the reports from the East. The legions there are not soft. They are a different kind of hard, forged in the heat of the desert, their discipline just as iron as your own, but their world-view, their entire culture, has diverged. They are the favoured sons of the new order, and you are the forgotten stepchildren. You are holding 2 separate empires together under the name of one. There is the Empire of the North, Latin-speaking, culturally conservative, tied to the land, and fighting a constant, grinding, defensive war against a tide of restless tribes. And there is the Empire of the South, Greek and Aramaic-speaking, culturally syncretic, fabulously wealthy, and engaged in a vast, profitable enterprise of maritime commercial expansion. One half of the empire is focused on holding a wall in the cold forests of Germania. The other half is focused on naval patrols in the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. You live with the constant, gnawing fear of the great betrayal, a scenario you and your officers discuss in hushed, treasonous whispers. What happens when a truly massive barbarian incursion occurs? A confederation of Goths, Vandals, and Alans pouring across the Danube in the hundreds of thousands. You would send a desperate plea for reinforcements to Rome. But would they come? Or would the Emperor Eudaemon and his Palmyrene advisors look at the map and make a cold calculation? Would they decide that the province of Dacia, or even northern Gaul, is not worth the cost of diverting resources from the protection of the far more valuable trade routes to the east? Would they simply cut you loose, sacrificing the old, unprofitable heartlands to preserve their new commercial empire? Your fears are given a sharp, immediate focus that very afternoon. A scout, his face grey with exhaustion, arrives with a terrifying report. A massive war host of the Chatti tribe is on the move, heading for the weakest point in your defensive line. It is not a raid, it is an invasion. You are faced with an impossible choice. Your forces are too thin to meet them in a decisive battle. You must abandon vast swathes of territory, sacrificing towns and farms, to concentrate your legions for a last-ditch defense of the main fortress cities. It is the only sound military option. But as you stand before the map, your fingers tracing the lines of retreat, you feel a surge of cold fury. You are the ducks of the Rhine. Your entire life, your entire identity, is bound up in the defense of this line. To surrender a single inch of Roman soil feels like a personal failure, a betrayal of your ancestors. "We will not retreat," you say to Valerius, your voice dangerously quiet. "We will march to meet them." Valerius looks at you, his eyes wide. "We have the discipline," you counter, the old, stubborn Roman pride rising in you like a fever. "We have the eagle of the legion. We will remind these barbarians, and we will remind those merchants in Rome, what a true Roman army can do." You know it is a gamble, a desperate, perhaps foolish, throw of the dice. But it is more than a strategic decision. It is an act of defiance. It is a refusal to accept your own obsolescence. You are marching not just against the Chatti. You are marching against the tide of history, against a future that has no place for you, for your kind of soldier, for your kind of Rome. You are marching to prove that the cold iron of the Rhine is still worth more than all the warm spices of the Red Sea. You are standing in what was once the heart of the world, the Roman Forum. The afternoon sun, filtered through a thin haze of dust and the smoke of 1,000 cooking fires, casts long, distorted shadows from the crumbling marble columns. The place is still alive, still crowded, but it is a different kind of life. The sharp, declarative cadences of Latin are now a minority tongue. The air is a bazaar of other sounds. The fluid, musical tones of Greek, the guttural precision of Aramaic, the soft, sibilant whispers of Sabaean traders. You walk past the Curia Hostilia, the old Senate house. Its bronze doors are permanently sealed. The Senate has not been officially abolished. That would have been too crude, too provocative an act for the philosopher-emperor Eudaemon. It has simply been rendered irrelevant. Its powers transferred to a new imperial council that meets in Palmyra. Its decrees issued from the commercial capital of the world. The building is now a museum, a relic, a place where tour guides point out the spot where Caesar was supposedly assassinated. A story that now feels as distant and mythical as the tales of Romulus and Remus. You see the results of the metamorphosis everywhere. The temples of the old gods are still standing, but they are poorly maintained, their porticos strewn with litter, their altars cold. The true spiritual energy of the city is focused on the massive new temple complex that dominates the Palatine Hill, a structure that has replaced the old imperial palace. It is the Temple of the Twin Suns, a perfect architectural expression of the new state religion. Its western wing is a model of classical Roman design, dedicated to Sol Ordo, the Sun of Order, a place for the administration of law and the celebration of civic virtue. Its eastern wing, however, is a soaring, light-filled structure of arches and domes inspired by Palmyrene and Indian designs, a space for the mystical, contemplative worship of Sol Spiritus, the Sun of Spirit. The two are joined by a vast, open-air courtyard where the emperor, as high priest of both aspects of the faith, performs the daily syncretic rites. This is the new Rome, the Rome of the 2nd century of the Arabian era. The empire has not fallen. It has not collapsed. By any objective measure, it is wealthier and more stable than it has been in centuries. The trade routes are secure, the treasury is overflowing with the profits of the Eastern trade, and the great ideological schism that almost tore the state apart has been resolved. But in the process of saving itself, the empire has ceased to be Roman in any way that Lucius Marcius Philippus would have understood. Its soul has been completely and irrevocably transformed. You climb the Capitoline Hill and look out over the city. You are a historian, a scholar from the great library of Marib, sent here to the ancient heart of the empire to chronicle its past, a past that now feels like the history of a foreign civilization. From this vantage point, you can see the grand pattern of the change, the logical, inexorable consequences of a single, successful military campaign nearly 200 years ago. You think of Aelius Gallus, the man who started it all. He conquered Arabia to seize its wealth, believing he was simply adding another province to the imperium. He could never have imagined that he was opening a cultural and economic floodgate that would ultimately conquer Rome itself. The spice that flowed to Rome was not just a commodity, it was a catalyst. It created a new class of Eastern merchants. Men like Cinna, who wielded economic power with a sophistication the old senatorial class could not comprehend. Their wealth bought them political influence, which they used to protect their commercial interests, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of power that inevitably led them to seize control of the state itself. You think of the legions. The desperate soldier, Quintus, making an offering to a pagan stone, was the first seed of a religious revolution. His simple act of faith, multiplied 1,000-fold in the lonely outposts of the desert, created a spiritual vacuum that the formalized cult of the reborn sun rushed to fill. This new, syncretic faith gave the Eastern legions a unique and powerful identity, making them loyal not just to Rome, but to a new, Eastern vision of what Rome could be. In the West, you recall the tragic story of the Dux Stilicho, a man who died for an idea of Rome that no longer existed. His legions, the last bastion of the old ways. The Rhine frontier was eventually stabilized, but only after entire provinces were abandoned, deemed strategically irrelevant by a government whose gaze was fixed firmly on the east. The Western legions are now a second-rate border patrol, while the true heart of the Roman military sails the Indian Ocean. You think of the great intellectual fusion that occurred in your own library in Marib. The encounter between Greek logic and Eastern mysticism did not lead to the triumph of one over the other. It created a hybrid philosophy, a new way of seeing the world that underpins the entire imperial project. The state is now run by men educated in this new tradition, men who are equally comfortable discussing Stoic ethics, Buddhist metaphysics, and the mathematics of caravan logistics. They are pragmatic, cosmopolitan, and utterly devoid of the old Roman prejudices about blood and soil. This is the ultimate expression of the metamorphosis. The empire's power has remained stable, its borders largely secure, its economy prosperous, but its core identity, its values, its very soul have changed completely. The language of power is Latin, but the philosophy that guides it is Eastern. The emperor is an Augustus, but he is also a high priest of a desert sun god. The senators still meet in their villas, but they debate the price of silk while burning Arabian incense. The eagle is still the symbol of the legions, but it flies now on the masthead of a teak-hulled dromon sailing for India. Was the change for the better? You do not know. The old Rome, the Republic of Philippus's imagination, was a place of fierce, often brutal, certainties. It had a core of iron. This new empire is more flexible, more adaptable, perhaps more humane, but it is also more fluid, its identity a constantly shifting synthesis. The old Rome knew exactly what it was. This new Rome knows only what is profitable, what is practical, and what is harmonious according to its syncretic faith. You look down at the forum, at the commingling of a dozen peoples, at the strange, beautiful, and utterly un-Roman world they have created. Aelius Gallus won his war. He conquered Arabia Felix, but the ghost of the defeated Mukarib of Marib has had the final laugh. "The desert will take it back now," he had said of his city. It takes everything. In the end, he was wrong about the city, but right about the principle. The spirit of his ancient, patient, and profoundly transformative land did not need to defeat Rome's armies. It seduced the empire with its wealth, changed it with its ideas, and finally captured its soul with its gods. The conquest was not a failure. It was a success so total, so complete, that it consumed the conqueror. The metamorphosis is a story of unintended consequences, a narrative of a victory so profound it utterly transforms the victor. The conquest of Arabia Felix was not a simple addition of territory. It was the injection of a powerful cultural and economic catalyst into the Roman system. The empire did not fall. It was reborn as something else entirely. It retained the name and the structure of Rome, but its soul became a hybrid of West and East. The central question of this timeline is not one of success or failure, but of identity. In achieving its ultimate commercial ambitions, did Rome fulfill its destiny or lose itself completely? Was this transformation a glorious evolution into a truly universal empire, or the quiet, insidious death of the unique civilization that had conquered the world?